If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 101, Sword Fighting and Apparition. As summer rolled in, Harry was spending his days at the Black Castle, ready to dive into learning new things. His usual busy lifestyle didn't let him sit still for long. Harry was especially excited to start learning sword fighting. It took a couple of days before Arcturus came to Harry with some encouraging news. They had thought finding a sword fighting instructor in Britain would be easy, but it turned out to be quite the opposite. After guns became popular in the Muggle world, it seemed like almost no one practiced sword fighting anymore. But Arcturus, using all his contacts in the Muggle world, had managed to find someone who might be able to teach Harry. "I've found someone who might teach you sword fighting," Arcturus told him. "He's part of a group trying to revive sword fighting in the Muggle world. They call it Historical European Martial Arts, or HEMA. It's still quite new, but it might be worth giving it a shot. Just don't get too excited yet, it's all quite new and untested." Harry, curious and hopeful, was quick to accept. "Let's give it a go," he said eagerly. Later that day, he and Sirius went together, both curious about this potential sword-fighting teacher. Their journey led them to a humble training ground where they were greeted by a young man with a passion for the revival of HEMA. The instructor, full of enthusiasm but clearly a novice, shared his vision of building a community around traditional European swordsmanship. He admitted to being mostly self-taught, relying heavily on old texts to master the art. As the lesson went on, Harry realized that he might not be as fortunate in finding a skilled instructor in sword fighting as he had been with other disciplines like martial arts, gym, potions, and dueling. Despite his high hopes, it became apparent that this instructor's abilities were quite basic. The young man was enthusiastic but clearly just beginning his own journey in mastering sword fighting. He frequently stopped to consult worn, old books he'd brought with him. While Harry respected his dedication, he could see that the instruction wouldn't meet his needs. Feeling let down, Harry made up his mind not to come back after that first day. "If I'm going to learn from books, I might as well use the ones from the Gryffindor inheritance," he told Sirius on their way back. "They're likely to be far more detailed and specific to the style I need to master." "Why exactly are you interested in sword fighting, though?" Sirius asked curiously as they made their way back. "It's not exactly practical against a wand." Harry laughed. "Maybe it's not the most practical skill for a wizard, but I think it's cool. Besides, who knows? Maybe one day I'll find myself fighting dragons or exploring ancient ruins. It could come in handy." Back at Black Castle, Harry began to develop his own sword training routine. He discovered several detailed books in the Gryffindor inheritance that taught various sword fighting techniques and stances. The instructions in these books were very clear, and the illustrations detailed, offering a strong basis for learning on his own. Eager to use his summer productively, Harry spent the following days constructing a durable practice dummy on the castle's vast grounds. He used magic to strengthen the dummy, making sure it could handle his strongest hits. Every morning, armed with a wooden training sword he had gotten for himself, Harry practiced the techniques he had studied the day before. Over time, as days turned into weeks, Harry's skill with the sword improved. He progressed from basic stances and cuts to more intricate combinations and defensive moves. This physical training not only honed his sword skills but also complemented his night breathing exercises, boosting both his strength and flexibility. Since Harry hadn't picked up any new magical subjects to study during the vacation, he had plenty of time to dedicate to his night breathing and sword training. The only magic he practiced was dueling with Arcturus and Sirius, where they used more complex spells and combinations. Dueling was one magic training he never thought of pausing. Midway through the summer, Harry decided to learn another important wizarding skill, apparition. He thought it would be useful to have a quick way to escape if necessary, especially since no one would expect a 12-year-old to know how to apparate. Harry went to Cordelia's place for safety, accompanied by Sirius. If he made a mistake and hurt himself during practice, Cordelia would be there to heal him right away. Under Sirius's guidance, Harry began to learn the technique. Apparition required a lot of concentration, similar to casting spells. Harry had to remember the 3 Ds of apparition: destination, determination, and deliberation, which reminded him of the 3 Ds of spellcasting: direction, determination, and discipline. Harry focused intensely on his chosen destination, using his magic to try and transport himself there. Learning to apparate turned out to be easier than he expected. After a few successful attempts, he stayed at Cordelia's place and practiced for the entire day to make sure he could do it well enough. As the summer days passed, Harry enjoyed some leisure time, taking a memorable trip to France with his close ones. It was a much-needed break from his intense training and studies, filled with laughter and the joy of exploring new places. Before he knew it, summer had ended, and it was time to head back to Hogwarts for his second year. Harry hoped for a quieter year but knew well that adventure always seemed to find him. Still, one could hope for some peace. With his trunk packed and eager for whatever new adventures awaited him at Hogwarts, Harry made his way to King's Cross Station on his own this time. He had managed to convince all the adults that he could handle the trip by himself, and they didn't need to take time off work just to say goodbye to him at the station. Chapter 102, Journey Back to Hogwarts. Harry, entering his second year at Hogwarts, found himself back on the Hogwarts Express. The excitement was clear among the students bustling around on platform 9 3/4. With him were his friends, Cedric, Roger, Angelina, and Alicia. Unfortunately, due to a lack of space, his other friends, Reginald, Elvinia, and Arabella, had to settle into a compartment next door. As the train's whistle cut sharply through the chatter, signaling their departure, everyone quickly found their seats. "So, Cedric," Roger started with a mischievous smile as the train began its journey, "I heard from my dad, who heard it from your dad at the Ministry, that you're now considered the champion of Hufflepuff House." He teased, causing a ripple of laughter to spread among their group. Cedric's face turned a shade of red from embarrassment as he tried to brush off the comment. "Oh, come on, it's not really like that. My dad just tends to get a little too excited about my exam scores." Angelina joined in, giving Cedric a playful nudge. "Yeah, but from what I've heard about how your dad's been talking you up, you might as well be named the Hogwarts champion soon." Alicia added, with a twinkle in her eye, "Just imagine, Cedric Diggory, the golden boy of Hogwarts. It does sound pretty impressive." The group continued to tease Cedric, who, despite his embarrassment, managed to laugh along with them, though it was clear he was looking for a way to steer the conversation elsewhere. As everyone was enjoying a good laugh, the compartment door abruptly swung open. Fred and George Weasley burst in, each wearing their trademark mischievous grins. "Guess what, Potter?" one of the twins began, and as usual, Harry couldn't tell if it was Fred or George. The other twin quickly jumped in to finish the thought, "We've apprenticed to a marauder this summer." Harry, who wasn't particularly close to the Weasley twins, simply raised an eyebrow. "Really? And why are you telling me this?" Unfazed by Harry's lukewarm reaction, the twins continued enthusiastically. "Because, dear Potter," one of them said, "since you're Padfoot's protégé and we're now training under a marauder's tutelage as well, we thought it would be perfectly fair to challenge you to a friendly duel of pranks." "A prank-off, if you will," the other twin finished. Harry shook his head, a small smile appearing despite his reservations. "I think I'll pass. I've got enough on my plate with my studies this year." The twins looked at each other, pretending to be shocked. "Studying? Over pranking? That's outrageous!" they cried together. "Don't worry, Potter. We'll change your mind before the year's out," one of them said, winking. Harry just grimaced in response. Cedric, curious about the twins' mentor, asked, "Which marauders are teaching you?" He, like the others in the compartment, had heard all about the infamous group of Hogwarts pranksters from Harry. Fred smirked, "Well, we have a bit of an edge here." George added, "We're being taught by both Prongs and Moony." Alicia, puzzled, questioned, "How did you manage to get Moony to teach you?" Harry mentioned he was more of a teacher's pet and not much into causing trouble. Fred boasted, "No one can resist our charm." George chimed in, "Or our relentless pestering." Cedric, trying to sidestep any future pranks, pleaded, "Good for you too. Could you possibly spare me from your mischief?" George laughed, "No way. You're a celebrity." Fred teased, "The Hufflepuff champion." George continued, "We love to challenge champions." Fred concluded, "That way, we might become champions too." Together they exclaimed, "The champions of mischief." Cedric groaned, indicating his resignation, while the others in the compartment burst into laughter. As the twins prepared to leave, one of them left a mysterious hint, "Oh, and keep your eyes open at the feast tonight. We've got a surprise planned." The door closed with a soft click, and the laughter faded, leaving a brief silence in the compartment. Cedric looked over at Harry, worry clear in his eyes. "What do you think they're planning? I've got a bad feeling about this." Harry gave a noncommittal shrug, his thoughts already ticking through various scenarios. Nothing good, that's for sure. Just make sure you're ready to duck under the table if things start to look strange. Roger chimed in, I'll take your lead, Harry. When you duck, I duck. Harry nodded, sounds like a plan. Looks like I'll need to keep an eye out this year. You never know when those two might try something. Cedric half joked, half serious, Harry, could you teach me some cleaning spells or spells to counter whatever they throw at us? I'm not as quick on my feet as you. Harry smiled, sure thing. Let's set aside the first weekend back. It'll be useful for everyone to know these spells, not just for pranks but they're handy for everyday messes too. The excitement was palpable in Harry's compartment, particularly because this was the year they could try out for the Quidditch teams at Hogwarts. Cedric was aiming to be a seeker, while the other three Roger, Angelina and Alicia wanted to try for chaser positions. Roger turned to Harry, curiosity in his voice. What about you, Harry? Which position are you interested in? Harry hesitated slightly. I like the seeker spot, but I'm not sure I'll make the team. Why not? Asked Roger, puzzled. Harry explained, my daily schedule is already packed. I won't have time to fit in Quidditch practice, and I doubt the team captain would let someone play who can't make practice regularly. With his commitment to his studies and the night breathing method he was practicing, Harry didn't see room for the demanding Quidditch practice schedules. As a seeker, teamwork wasn't as critical, so if the captain was lenient, he might play, but Quidditch wasn't a major priority for him. Roger looked doubtful. That's tough. It sounds like it'd be hard to join the team without going to practices. Isn't there a way you could squeeze in some Quidditch? Harry shook his head. I've set up a specific training regimen. I don't want to disrupt that. Cedric, half joking, chimed in, well, that's good news for my team. I've seen you fly, Harry. If you were the opposing seeker, my team and I wouldn't stand a chance. The conversation shifted back to Quidditch strategies and stories. Harry admitted it would be fun to play against everyone, but it all depended on the team captain's decision. Regardless, he had brought his Quidditch broom along and planned to enjoy some friendly games with his friends during the holidays, if not in official matches. The rest of the train ride flew by, filled with laughter and animated conversations. Friends moved back and forth between the two compartments, exchanging tales of their summer adventures and guessing what the new school year might bring. By nightfall, the Hogwarts Express pulled into Hogsmeade Station. Everyone quickly piled into the carriages, eager to get to Hogwarts. The thought of the upcoming feast in the Great Hall had everyone's stomach rumbling, and they were all ready to enjoy the delicious food waiting for them. Chapter 103, Golden Mishaps at the Feast. As everyone arrived at the Great Hall, they quickly dispersed to their respective house tables. Soon, almost all the seats were taken, leaving just a few spots open for the incoming first-year students. Harry glanced around, his eyes settling on the staff table. He noticed that all the professors were there except for Professor McGonagall. His attention then shifted to the new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, who looked even less reliable than Fletcher had. Harry had a sinking feeling about the quality of the classes to come and sympathized with the Owl and Newt students wondering how they were going to manage their exams with such teaching. There was also a new face for Muggle studies. Professor Quirrell, who normally taught the class, had taken a sabbatical to supposedly tour the world for a year. Harry, however, knew the real reason behind Quirrell's leave wasn't as harmless as a world tour. Quirrell was actually on a quest to find Voldemort, not to revive him or anything like that, but to learn something from him so that he could be something in his life and not be laughed at ever again. It was a fool's errand. Quirrell's quest was doomed to failure, and Harry knew that next year he would return, with Voldemort latched onto the back of his head, effectively starting a fatal countdown for himself. As soon as Professor McGonagall walked in with the new first years in tow, the Great Hall quieted down for the Sorting Hat's annual song. The sorting ceremony unfolded quickly, with a group of students about the same size as Harry's year. Among the newcomers was Cho Chang, a name Harry noted. He had no idea if Cedric would end up falling for her, but one thing Harry was sure of, he wouldn't let Cedric die young. In his vision, Cedric was destined to have a family and grow old. The sorting continued, with other notable students including Katie Bell, Cormac McLagan, Faye Dunbar and Marietta Edgecombe, whom Harry decided to keep at arm's length. Given her future betrayal involving her mother at the Ministry, he planned to steer clear of her to prevent any secrets from leaking. Once the sorting wrapped up, Professor Dumbledore stood up. It's wonderful to see both familiar and new faces tonight. Before we begin the feast, I'd like to introduce Professor Cross, who will take over as your defense against the dark arts teacher, replacing Professor Salt. The announcement was met with groans from many students, who had been fond of the previous temporary professor's commitment to teaching. Professor Cross, seemingly unfazed by the lukewarm reception, stood up and offered a half-hearted wave to the crowd. Dumbledore continued, I would also like to welcome Professor Arif Sikander, who will be replacing Professor Quirrell as your Muggle Studies professor. Professor Sikander, with a friendly demeanor, stood and waved back at the students, who responded with applause. With the introductions over, Dumbledore went over the school rules and concluded, all right, that's enough from this old man. Let's get to what everyone has been waiting for. Let the feast begin. At that, dishes filled with delicious food materialized on the tables, and the students, famished after a long day, eagerly started to eat. As everyone was nearly done with their feast, Roger leaned back in his seat, patting his stomach. That was a good meal. What's up with the Weasley twins? Do you think they are going to pull something? Harry considered for a moment, glancing towards where the twins were sitting. They're probably too busy eating right now. If they're planning anything, it'll likely happen after the feast. Reggie, curious, chimed in. What do you reckon they're up to? Harry shrugged. I'm not sure, but I'd guess the other two marauders want to outdo Padfoot's performance from last year. They might have passed on some tricks to the twins. Reggie seemed a bit reassured by this. So, it should be harmless, then. Harry's expression was less certain. I'm not sure. Padfoot has calmed down a bit after living with grandfather. He knows where to draw the line now. I'm not sure if the others have started acting like grown-ups yet. Roger nodded, half joking, half serious. Well, I'll be ready to duck just in case. Dumbledore was about to stand up and speak to all the students when the Weasley twins suddenly jumped into action. They ran to the front of the Great Hall. Professor McGonagall quickly stood up, looking alarmed. What are you doing, Mr. Weasleys? Get back to your seats right now, she ordered, her voice firm and commanding. But the twins ignored her and quickly placed a mysterious box right in front of Dumbledore and ran back towards their seats, calling out, Sorry, Professor. It's a task from our masters, we can't disappoint them. McGonagall's expression grew even more serious. The headmaster has made it clear no pranks during the feast. I'm going to take that away, she said, walking towards the box. Fred called out in a worried voice as he moved away, Please, Professor, don't touch it. If you do, our masters will disown us. Professor Snape, who had been observing everything with a frown, grumbled, I don't care about your masters. He pointed his wand at the box, probably trying to make it disappear or destroy it. However, his spell ended up causing something unexpected. The box burst into a cloud of red smoke when Snape's spell hit it. Suddenly, a howler popped out, looking normal but filled with an unexpected voice. James Potter's voice filled the hall, booming loudly, Thanks, Snivellis, for starting our show. We couldn't have done it without you. The twins couldn't master the spell for remote activation because of the rules against underage magic. He laughed and added, I heard about Padfoot's show last year and how he got a lot of new fans here. I couldn't let him get all the attention, right? So, kids, enjoy this show we've put together for you. Then, Remus Lupin's voice came through, sounding regretful, Professor Dumbledore, I tried to stop him. But he was too excited about Padfoot's fame and the fans, and I couldn't stop him. I'm really sorry. As Remus's apology ended, the music picked up, leading into a stunning fireworks display. The Great Hall lit up with a cascade of colors and patterns, a visual treat of fireworks that filled the room with bursts of brilliance. Harry, despite his reservations, had to admit the display was impressively beautiful. It looked like the Marauders had learned how to create pranks that were enchanting without causing trouble, or at least that's what Harry initially thought. As the smoke from the fireworks began to clear, Harry spotted a large, ominous-looking ball hovering in the middle of the hall. His gut told him this wasn't good. Hide! He yelled suddenly. At first, the students were puzzled, still mesmerized by the fireworks display. But seeing Harry's urgent dive under the table, his friends quickly followed suit, ducking for cover. Several other quick-thinking students did the same. Just seconds later, the ball exploded, releasing a flood of bright golden paint that splashed everywhere. It covered everything: students, professors, and even the enchanted ceiling above. The hall quickly turned into a sea of gold. Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Flitwick had managed to protect themselves, either through fast reflexes or protective spells. Harry's friends were also spared from the mess because they had listened to Harry's warning. In the midst of the chaos, Professor Snape stood, completely drenched in gold paint, his face dark with fury. He pointed his wand toward where the Weasley twins had been, though they had already disappeared. Harry wondered why Snape hadn't dodged the paint. What he didn't know was that James had tweaked the fireworks to ensure Snape couldn't react in time. -100 points from Gryffindor for this abomination. And 1 month detention with me, Fred and George Weasley. Snape thundered, determined to regain control. As everyone started to realize the extent of the mess, the initial amusement turned into annoyance. Everyone was covered in a thick, glittering layer of golden paint. The enchanted ceiling added a sparkle to their predicament, making it clear that this prank would require more than a simple cleaning spell. The professors and students now faced the prospect of a lengthy cleanup. They would need to return to their dormitories or find a bathroom to try and scrub off the stubborn paint, uncertain if it would easily wash away. The Great Hall was buzzing with murmurs of annoyance as students expressed their frustration over having to clean themselves up before they could even think about resting. The cheerful atmosphere from the feast had fizzled out, leaving behind the dread of dealing with an untimely mess on their first night back at Hogwarts. Dumbledore's firm voice rose above the noise. "This is exactly why we discourage such pranks. Now, please head to your common rooms to clean up. Prefects, assist the first years." Without the usual enthusiasm for the Hogwarts song, Dumbledore concluded the evening, signaling it was time to head out. As the students slowly made their way out, Harry looked around at the crowd of unhappy faces. His friends were somewhat spared from the worst of the paint splatter thanks to his quick warning, but they hadn't avoided it entirely. They tugged at their robes, now dotted with paint, discussing how best to tackle the sticky mess. They also had to navigate through the paint-smeared floors. Cedric, trying to lighten the mood, cracked a joke. "Well, at least we're all shining brightly for the start of the school year." Harry responded with a playful jab, "You should not have ducked, Cedric. You would have really looked like the golden boy of Hufflepuff then." This quip brought a brief moment of laughter from Harry's friends, though they quickly quieted down under the stern looks from other students. Harry exhaled deeply, realizing that the days of prank shows might be over at Hogwarts. Even those students who had been thrilled by Sirius's display last year were likely disillusioned now. He also felt a twinge of sympathy for the Weasley twins. This stunt might make things tough for them with their peers, and Harry hoped it would dissuade them from pursuing the prank war they'd proposed on the train. All in all, this year was starting off with a bang, a messy, glittering bang that no one was particularly thrilled about. Chapter 104, Tutoring a Metamorphmagus. As the second day of school began, everything at Hogwarts looked as if nothing unusual had happened the night before. The Great Hall was spotless, thanks to the hard work of the house elves who had cleaned up all the golden paint from the opening feast's prank. Fred and George Weasley, who were now famous for their prank on the first day, found themselves in trouble. They had nightly detentions with Professor Snape, who made them clean old potion cauldrons that had been ignored for a long time. This punishment meant they had no time to think about or plan any more pranks. Additionally, many students were annoyed with them now, which made it hard for them to find allies for any prank war they might want to start with Harry. Despite this, Harry stayed on alert, careful to avoid any leftover pranks they might have set up. Classes started again for Harry and his classmates. The schedule was much like last year's, but with one big improvement: they were doing more practical spell work. This was a change that everyone liked because it meant they could practice casting spells more, which was more fun and interesting than just reading about them. Defense against the dark arts was turning out just as troublesome as Harry had expected. The new teacher, Mr. Cross, was proving to be even less capable than the last one. His lessons were a tedious repeat of last year's ineffective methods, consisting mainly of having students read aloud from the textbook while the rest took notes. True to form, Professor Cross found every excuse to cancel classes or avoid any real teaching, particularly any practical use of magic. Harry doubted anyone would learn anything new in Dada this year. Despite these issues, Harry wasn't too bothered by the poor quality of the Dada classes. He used this time to practice legilimency on Mr. Cross. During class, Harry would perform wandless legilimency, carefully exploring the professor's thoughts when he looked around at the students. After practicing on Professor Fletcher the previous year, Harry was skilled enough to navigate someone's mind without harming them. Harry had no trouble practicing legilimency on Mr. Cross because the professor didn't have any mental shields, so Harry remained undetected. He also used this opportunity to check if this Dada teacher had any hidden agendas at Hogwarts. After a brief look into Cross's thoughts, Harry found out that the professor was only at Hogwarts for the high salary. Dumbledore had increased the Dada professor's salary to attract more candidates because it was so hard to find a Dada professor this year after the unfortunate fate of Professor Fletcher last year. Even though Cross was not very qualified, he was the best among the few who applied, so Dumbledore had no choice but to hire him. However, having Professor Cross as the Dada teacher was bad news for the students, especially those facing important exams like the Owls and Newts. These exams required good practical instruction in defense spells, and Mr. Cross's lack of effective teaching left many students struggling. Among them was Nymphadora Tonks, a 7th-year student aiming to become an Auror, for whom excellent Dada grades were essential. One day, Tonks came looking for help and found Harry. "Hey, my dear cousin, could you lend me a hand with something?" Tonks inquired, her tone light but earnest. Harry raised an eyebrow. "Why are you, a 7th year, asking a 2nd year like me for help?" Tonks sighed, a bit exasperated. "You know I'm aiming to be an Auror, and for that, I really need to excel in Dada. Could you help me out with the subject?" She explained earnestly. Harry was puzzled. Why would a 7th year need help from a 2nd year like me? Tonks chuckled awkwardly. "Well, word in the family is that Lord Black has been coaching you in dueling. Maybe you could pass some tips my way." Harry considered her request carefully. "Even if I can help, why should I? My schedule's already a nightmare," he said, half joking. "Please, cousin. I really need your help. It won't take up much of your time, just once a week." Tonks pleaded, her eyes conveying her desperation. Feeling a mix of sympathy and familial duty after all, Sirius thought highly of Tonks's mum. Harry decided to help, but on his terms. "All right, I'll help. But on 2 conditions," Harry stated, ready to negotiate. "First, our lessons stay just between us. I don't need everyone lining up for tips. If you want to help your friends, you'll have to pass on what I teach you yourself." "Fair enough," Tonks agreed quickly. "And second," Harry continued, a playful smirk forming, "I get to call you Nymphadora during our sessions. No fuss about it." "No way. No one calls me that name," Tonks protested, her face twisting in annoyance. "That's my offer. Take it or leave it," Harry stated flatly. After a moment of consideration, Tonks relented. "Fine, but only during our lessons. And if you tease me too much, I'm complaining to Sirius." "Deal," Harry concluded with a grin. "So, when do we start, Nymphadora?" Tonks tried to hide her irritation at the name but managed a grin. "Anytime you're ready, Harry." "Let's make it today then, Nymphadora." "I'll scout out a classroom for us," Harry replied, already thinking ahead. From then on, Harry dedicated 3 hours every Saturday to helping Tonks with Dada studies. They didn't just focus on 7th year material, Harry also helped fill in gaps from previous years. Due to the inconsistent quality of Dada teachers at Hogwarts, many students, including Tonks, had incomplete knowledge of the subject. While Harry wasn't concerned about the other students' knowledge gaps, he was happy to help Tonks and, by extension, his own friends. Their sessions were highly effective. Tonks was exceptionally gifted in magic. She could pick up spells quickly after just watching Harry demonstrate a few times. Harry suspected her talent had something to do with her being a metamorphmagus, which might make her more attuned to magic. Despite the serious nature of their study, Harry couldn't resist the opportunity to tease her by calling her Nymphadora, much to her annoyance, a detail that always amused Sirius when Harry shared stories from their sessions. Harry also took it upon himself to help improve Tonks's natural clumsiness, incorporating weight training and balance exercises into their classes, enhancing her skills for her future career as an Auror. Despite the initial reluctance, Tonks appreciated the comprehensive training, recognizing its value in her pursuit of joining the Aurors, and fulfilling the aspirations of her family and Sirius. Given Tonks's unique metamorphmagus abilities, Harry knew she would likely be assigned undercover roles once she became an Auror. It was essential, then, that she was well prepared to defend herself in potentially dangerous situations. Harry was determined to equip her with all the skills necessary for her success and safety. Chapter 105, Quidditch Tryouts in School. 1 week later, on a chilly Saturday morning, Harry and Roger made their way to the Hogwarts Quidditch pitch. Roger was a bundle of nerves hidden beneath a thin veil of excitement. Today was the day for the Ravenclaw Quidditch team tryouts. Upon their arrival, they found a group of eager students already milling about, each buzzing with the thrill of competition. Daniel Rogers, the Ravenclaw team captain, stepped forward to address the crowd. "All right, everyone, welcome to the Ravenclaw tryouts," he announced. "For those who don't know me, I'm Daniel Rogers, your captain. I usually guard the hoops as the keeper. Today, we're testing for all positions except beaters. We're set there. But chaser, seeker, and even my spot as keeper are open. If anyone out here can outplay me or any of our current players, you could find yourself on the team." This announcement stirred excitement among the roughly 15 Ravenclaw students who had come to try out, each hoping to secure a spot on the team and gain some school-wide recognition. The tryouts began with the chaser position. Each participant was tasked with outmaneuvering a defender and then attempting to score against Rogers, who was defending the hoops. They were given 5 shots each to showcase their skills. The air was filled with a mix of cheers for successful goals and groans for missed opportunities. When it was Harry's turn, he climbed onto his Comet 220 broom, a model he was still using as he waited for the release of the firebolt before upgrading. Harry caught the quaffle thrown his way and waited for the whistle. At the sound, he surged forward. He had practiced maneuvers over the summer with Cedric, but facing off against seasoned Quidditch players was a different challenge. Harry executed a series of feints to shake the defender, and after leaving the defender behind him, Harry went close to the hoops and scored easily. Harry's strong arm and precise aim made it difficult for Rogers to block his shots. The crowd, particularly a few spectators in the stands, began to applaud as Harry consistently bypassed the defender and scored. By the end of his turn, Harry had impressively netted all 5 of his shots, demonstrating his skill in both maneuvering and scoring. Next up was Roger, who, inspired by Harry's performance, also succeeded in scoring all 5 of his attempts, showing off his skills. The previous year's team members followed, and they matched the high performance set by Harry and Roger, leaving Daniel with some tough decisions to make about who would make the team. Next, it was time for the Seeker tryouts. The task was to catch golf ball-sized balls that a beater hit into the air. Each hopeful had to catch these balls before they touched the ground, and like before, everyone got 5 tries. Harry, known for his quick reflexes, managed to catch all 5 balls effortlessly. A 7th-year student, who was the team seeker last year, also succeeded in catching all the balls. This set up a direct competition between him and Harry. The real test began when a snitch was released into the air. The first person to catch the snitch in 2 out of 3 attempts would secure the seeker spot on the team. Harry's competitive nature was evident as he swiftly captured the snitch in the first 2 rounds without giving his competitor a chance. As soon as Harry spotted the snitch, it was clear it would be his opponent barely had a moment to react. Before the team captain, Rogers, could announce the results, Harry approached him to discuss his particular circumstances. "Rogers, I need to be honest about something. My family has set up a strict training schedule for me, which means I can't join the early morning practice sessions. I can make it to later sessions or on weekends, though," Harry explained. This put Rogers in a tough spot. Harry had proven himself to be an exceptional seeker, possibly the best he had seen. However, adjusting the team's schedule just for one player could upset the balance and fairness among the team members. Additionally, the other contender for the seeker position was Roger's friend and in his last year at Hogwarts, looking to impress talent scouts. After thinking it over, Rogers made the difficult decision to assign Harry as the reserve seeker instead of giving him the starting position. He explained to Harry, "Given the NEWT exam 7th-year students like me will be taking, you'll likely get to play in the last match of the season. And of course, if there are any unforeseen circumstances, we might need you for other games as well. I am sorry about this, but this is the best I can do." Harry understood and respected the decision. He was happy for the opportunity to demonstrate his abilities, even if he wouldn't be the main seeker. He also accepted his role as a reserve seeker, knowing it was the fairest solution for the team. Harry knew that giving him special privileges would create problems within the team if handled poorly. Later that day, after a few more rounds of tryouts, the final decisions for the chaser positions were announced. Roger was thrilled to secure a spot on the team, and Harry was the first to congratulate him on his success. Throughout the week, the other house teams also conducted their tryouts, and soon the results were known. Harry's friends managed to secure the positions they were aiming for. Angelina and Alicia were both selected as chasers for the Gryffindor team, and Cedric was chosen as the seeker for Hufflepuff. Although Harry's own situation wasn't what he had hoped for, the tryouts had showcased his exceptional flying skills to everyone who watched. Even though he wouldn't be playing in every game, his role as a reserve, capable of playing both as a seeker and a chaser, was a valuable asset for the Ravenclaw team. They now had a strong backup player ready to step in whenever necessary. With Quidditch practice not taking up any of his time, Harry had a lot of time to focus on his other interests. One of his main focuses was progressing with the night breathing technique. He had found the perfect place for his training deep within the Forbidden Forest. There, he set up a new practice dummy. The forest creatures no longer posed a threat to him, making it an ideal spot for his training. Practicing in the tranquility of nature proved to be very beneficial for Harry, enhancing his concentration and peace of mind. This secluded spot also gave him the privacy he needed for his sword practice, away from the eyes of other students and professors, allowing him to train undisturbed. Along with his physical training in the night breathing technique, Harry was also diligently working on the vanishing cabinet in the Room of Hidden Things. The repair work might have looked simple, but Harry was cautious. Space magic was complex and required careful handling. He conducted various tests on the cabinet to make sure the magical space within it was stable and safe before he would even consider stepping through it himself. On the academic side, Harry wasn't just taking it easy. He had already finished the regular Hogwarts courses for all years and was now diving into more advanced studies. In the wizarding world, further education often meant apprenticing under a master in a specific field instead of going to a traditional college. The levels of education were classified as school, apprentice, master, and grandmaster. Grandmasters were widely respected for their vast knowledge and accomplishments. However, the pursuit of knowledge never really ended. Even if there were no official titles for knowledge beyond the grandmaster level, learning continued indefinitely. Harry decided to focus on healing, thanks to his connections with Cordelia and Emma, and on curse breaking and warding. These subjects were essential for his future plans to travel the wizarding world, uncover secrets, and explore hidden places. He also kept up with his dueling practice to refine his skills. Harry was very systematic in his approach to learning. He was careful not to take on too much at once, choosing to fully immerse himself in one area before moving on to another. Even with the aid of the Ravenclaw diadem, which enhanced his ability to learn, Harry estimated it would take him more than 5 years to reach a master's level in any subject. Since he was tackling 2 subjects at the same time, it would likely take even longer. Harry was okay with this because he understood the importance of both areas for his future plans. Harry had a full schedule thus set for this school year. He started his days early with night training, breathing exercises, and sword practice, both in the early mornings and evenings. During the day, he attended his classes at Hogwarts, and at night, he dedicated his time to studying advanced magic. To make the most of his time, Harry figured out a smart way to handle his class assignments without cutting into his study time at night. He used a special quill that could write down assignments just from his thoughts. This clever tool allowed him to focus on lectures while the quill quietly worked on his homework. The weekends brought Harry some much-needed downtime from his busy schedule. He used this time to relax and have fun. He enjoyed playing Quidditch with his friends or just exploring the nooks and crannies of the castle. These lighter activities were a good break from his rigorous training and studies, helping him maintain a balance between work and play. Chapter 106, Hallows Eve morning. Time at Hogwarts flew by without anything interesting happening, and soon it was Quidditch season again. Although not interested in watching Quidditch games, Harry decided to attend this year's matches to support his friends. They were starting off this year and Harry wanted to cheer for them as well as see how they would perform in actual games. They were quite good in the games they played during the weekends and Harry had high expectations. The season kicked off with a match between Gryffindor and Slytherin, 2 of the strongest contenders for the Quidditch Cup. The game, however, turned out to be tough for the young Gryffindor chasers. Despite their speed and skill, they struggled against the aggressive play style of the Slytherin team, who didn't shy away from using rough tactics. The Slytherin players even resorted to fouling the Gryffindor newbies, aiming to injure them and knock them out of the game. Harry watched frustrated from the stands, angry at the unfairness but knowing he couldn't intervene without causing more trouble for himself and his friends. Slytherin won decisively with a score of 300-50, but their happiness was short-lived. The next day, each Slytherin player mysteriously ended up with a Joker face painted on their faces that wouldn't wash off. While they blamed the Weasley twins for the prank, Harry just watched everything unfold with a quiet smile. Next was the match between Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw. Roger, playing for Ravenclaw, showed good form, possibly performing a bit better than the Gryffindor players due to his stronger build, but it wasn't enough to make a significant difference. The game highlighted how physical strength and fitness were crucial for chasers in Quidditch. The match ended with Hufflepuff emerging victorious, thanks to Cedric Diggory's quick reflexes as a seeker. His lean build and quickness on the broom helped him outpace the Ravenclaw seeker, snagging the snitch for his team and securing the win. Weeks went by quickly after the Quidditch matches, and before long, it was the last day of October Halloween. This day always put Harry on edge. In the days leading up to it, he had been extra vigilant, using the Marauder's map to patrol the castle and diving into the Dada professor's memories in search of any hint of trouble. But so far, everything seemed normal. It looked like this might actually be a calm year, which made Harry cautiously optimistic. On the morning of Halloween, Harry stuck to his routine. He jogged to his secluded training spot in the Forbidden Forest, where he practiced with his wooden sword. He enjoyed the peacefulness of the forest, which helped him concentrate and practice the sword undisturbed. As he was intensely practicing his sword strikes on the training dummy, Harry suddenly heard a strange hissing sound. He paused, sword in mid-air, and listened intently. The forest was usually quiet apart from the natural sounds of wildlife, and Harry had set up protective wards to ensure his training spot remained undisturbed. Intrigued and a bit alarmed, Harry wondered who or what could have bypassed his defenses. The hissing was unusual, and he couldn't immediately place what could be making such a noise in this part of the forest. As he concentrated, Harry realized that the hissing noise he heard was actually a snake talking. "Why is that human hitting a dead tree?" "The human might be crazy," said the Sonk, which Harry understood clearly due to being a parcel mouth. Once Harry recognized the source of the sound as that of a snake, his curiosity faded, and he picked up his sword to resume his practice. "For a moment I thought the human heard me speak and was looking for me. Silly me. Speakers are too rare, there's no way someone as great as a speaker would be hitting a dead tree like that." Harry ignored the snake and continued his practice. In his previous life, the presence of a snake might have scared him away from the spot forever, but in this life, a snake was as insignificant to him as an ant. He could kill a snake with a thought alone. "I don't have time to watch this crazy human. Those darn spiders, I don't know what's gotten into them. They've started moving from their nest. They must be mad moving so close to the edge of the forest." Harry paused in his sword practice when he heard this last bit. On a day like today, he was especially vigilant, and any mention of large spiders set off alarm bells in his head. Large spiders in the Forbidden Forest were likely the acromantulas descended from Hagrid's pet Aragog. The idea of those dangerous creatures coming close to the edge of the forest near the school suggested trouble might be brewing. Harry, feeling a strong sense of urgency, began searching for the source of the voice. He soon located the chatty snake, which from its markings, he identified as a common European viper, also known as an adder. He cautiously approached the snake. "Why did the crazy human stop again? Why is he coming towards me? Should I run?" The snake wondered aloud in alarm. In Parseltongue, Harry called out, "Come out, snake, I need to talk to you." Over the years, Harry had mastered the ability to switch between speaking Parseltongue and his normal language with ease. "A speaker. I am honored," the snake exclaimed, its tone shifting to one of respect. "I apologize for my earlier words. I wasn't thinking clearly. Please, don't kill me." "Quiet. I'm not going to kill you," Harry replied quickly. "I need information about the spiders you mentioned just now." "Those terrible spiders? Oh, speaker, you should eliminate them. They're dreadful. They built a new nest right next to my home, and I had no choice but to flee," the snake explained. "Why did they move? What happened to their leader?" Harry inquired, seeking more details. "There's a rumor of a civil war within their group. The clan split, and the losing group was expelled," the snake revealed. Harry understood that there must have been a falling out between Aragog and a new, strong acromantula, leading to the division. Realizing the potential threat this posed, he decided it was essential to investigate this splinter group to determine if they posed any danger to the school. With his acceptance of Gryffindor's legacy, Harry felt a responsibility to protect Hogwarts from external threats. "Lead me to these spiders," Harry commanded. Excited by the prospect of reclaiming its home, the snake agreed eagerly, "Yes, speaker. Destroy them. Let's take back my home." Harry cautiously followed the snake as it weaved through the trees, leading him to a part of the forest close to the Great Lake. He remembered jogging through this area last year, but it looked completely different now. Where there had once been a shadowy grove dense with tall trees, there were now sprawling webs shimmering with dew. The webs were teeming with acromantulas of various sizes, some as big as small cars. Seeing about 200 of these formidable creatures so close to the school grounds was truly alarming. Even with his considerable skills, Harry wasn't confident he could handle such a vast number of these dangerous spiders on his own. Based on his unfortunate relationship with Halloween at Hogwarts, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that something was bound to go wrong tonight, possibly involving this large group of acromantulas. Unsure of the best course of action and knowing he couldn't handle this threat alone, Harry realized he needed to alert someone, either one of the professors or Sirius, who was now working in the Auror department. While Harry was lost in thought, considering his options, the snake, eager to take back its home, slithered a bit too boldly. Its movement caught the attention of the nearby acromantulas. Chapter 107, First Encounter with the Acromantulas. As the small snake darted toward the gathering of giant acromantulas, it called out loudly in determination, "Speaker, come on, kill these spiders and take back my home." Under normal conditions, the sight of such a small snake challenging a group of large acromantulas might have seemed funny, but here, with the imposing spiders looming, it was anything but amusing. Harry felt a pang of worry for the brave little snake and regretted bringing it along. It would have been wiser to simply get directions from the snake and leave it behind. The acromantulas, now alerted by the snake's bold intrusion, shifted their focus menacingly toward it. The snake faced the towering spiders defiantly, almost as if it were sneering at them. This seemed to provoke a few of the bolder spiders, who quickly moved to dispatch what they saw as a pesky nuisance. Harry reacted immediately. With a swift flick of his wand, he cast a summoning charm that whisked the snake into the safety of his hand. Although Harry felt no particular affection for the snake, its tips about the acromantulas being so close to Hogwarts had proved crucial, and he felt compelled to rescue it for its help. Now fully aware of a bigger threat in their midst, the acromantulas became visibly agitated. A loud screech from one of the largest spiders rallied the others, and a swarm of them began to advance aggressively toward Harry. With the snake now safe in his hand, Harry didn't hesitate. He sprinted deeper into the forest, deciding against engaging the enormous acromantula colony by himself. He also refrained from casting any spells that might further provoke the already dangerous spiders. Although heading straight back to the castle might have been simpler, Harry knew that leading such lethal creatures towards other students was too risky. Fortunately, his enhanced speed from his night training made him faster than ever, allowing him to easily outpace the spiders. After running a good distance, Harry dared to look back to check on his pursuers. To his relief, only about 10 large acromantulas and 20 smaller ones had continued the chase. Feeling confident that he could manage these numbers, Harry stopped to face his foes. This was his first real battle, and he was both nervous and excited. He pulled out the steel Gryffindor family sword from his pouch, not the wooden practice sword he usually carried, and braced himself for the fight. Although acromantulas were challenging opponents due to their venom and webs, Harry was keen to put his swordsmanship to the test against actual threats. He knew that if the fight turned dire, he could still fall back on powerful fire spells. The snake, still coiled around his arm, seemed to sense the impending battle and hissed encouragingly, "Come on, Speaker, hack those spiders." Despite the seriousness of the situation, Harry couldn't help but smile at the snake's bravado, though it clearly didn't grasp the full danger they were in. He appreciated the support as he squared off against the encircling spiders. Just then, one of the smaller acromantulas made a sudden leap towards him. Harry's response was swift and precise, his sword sliced cleanly through the creature, effectively having it in mid-air. As more spiders approached, he realized he needed a free hand to manage his spells, so he switched to fighting with one hand. He started to burn the webs that were being thrown at him and used his wand to deflect the venom spat by the acromantulas, all while continuing to fend off the attackers with his sword. As the fight grew fiercer, Harry's rigorous training paid off splendidly. He moved around the open space with grace, easily sidestepping the acromantulas as they leapt towards him. His sword moves were sharp and strong, cutting through the spiders' thick, hairy legs, rendering them helpless one after another. His actions were smooth, resembling a dance as he navigated through the forest of venomous fangs. Each time a spider tried to surround him, Harry quickly identified and exploited the weaknesses in their approach. Whenever he spotted an especially good opportunity, he would spring forward with an energetic jump, slashing his sword powerfully through the body of the spider, sending it crashing to the forest floor with a heavy thud. With every slash and dodge, Harry's awareness of his surroundings grew sharper, his instincts honed by the immediate danger posed by each spider. The fight transformed into a dangerous dance of swift moves and strategic retreats. During this intense combat, Harry discovered an intriguing aspect of his training. As he engaged the spiders, he realized that his sword fighting stance and movements remarkably aligned with the poses recommended for the night breathing technique. Without even thinking about it, he was breathing in the rhythm prescribed by the technique, which not only enhanced his combat effectiveness but also fortified his body more efficiently than his regular practice sessions. This realization thrilled Harry, giving him a rush of exhilaration as he noticed the tangible benefits of his training in real combat. His strikes became quicker and more forceful, each move driven by both necessity and a newfound joy in the physical challenge. Within about 15 minutes, the battlefield was strewn with the remains of dead acromantulas. Their legs were spread out across the ground, and their venom shone on the leaves under the sunlight. The small group of acromantulas was no match for Harry. After ensuring no more acromantulas were coming, Harry began to collect the valuable parts of the defeated spiders. He knew that acromantula venom and other body parts were quite valuable, so he carefully gathered them, placing them into an expandable pouch for safekeeping. Harry felt a sense of accomplishment as he surveyed the aftermath of the battle. He was completely unharmed, not a single scratch on him. The only signs of the recent fight were the splashes of blood on his clothes, a few drops of venom here and there, and his heavy breathing from the exertion. He was quite tired and looked forward to returning to the castle for a well-deserved meal. However, before he could head back, he needed to secure his loot. If he delayed, other creatures from the forest might scavenge or destroy the valuable materials. Ideally, he would have called Myra, his house elf, to use her magic for an easy pack-up, but Hogwarts rules were strict about house elves with owners entering the school grounds. Harry had confirmed this with the Hogwarts kitchen elves. They had explained that any visiting elf would be quickly detected by the Hogwarts elves, who would then alert the headmaster. Such an infraction could lead to penalties for the student involved. This restriction made Harry think about the events described in the Harry Potter books, suggesting to him that many incidents might have been orchestrated or manipulated by Dumbledore, possibly as a way to train or test Harry. Lost in these thoughts, Harry was brought back to reality by the snake's excited hissing. The snake, exhilarated by their triumph, suggested eagerly, "The fight was thrilling, Speaker. They were no match for us. Let's go back to my nest and clear out the rest." Harry glanced at his watch and realized he couldn't linger. "Not now. I've got classes," he told the snake. "Check your nest in a few days, the spiders will likely be gone. Take care," he added, then started back toward the castle. "Can I come with you, Speaker?" the snake asked, clearly wanting to stick by Harry. "Not this time. My being a speaker is a secret, so I can't be seen with you. Maybe in a few years, we can meet again. Until then, goodbye," Harry explained, continuing his walk. While Harry had grown fond of the brave and clever snake, he knew carrying it around would cast him in a suspicious light, possibly as an evil dark wizard, which was trouble he didn't need. As he walked, Harry's mind was filled with pressing concerns, primarily the large acromantula colony close to Hogwarts. The loss they'd suffered today might make them desperate enough to attack the school, especially with tonight being the Halloween night. Harry pondered whether to alert someone or handle the threat himself. Just minutes before, he would have notified Sirius without hesitation, avoiding the risk of a dangerous battle. However, the benefits he gained from running the night breathing technique during the battle were too substantial to ignore. The progress from those few minutes of combat was equivalent to a month's worth of training, and Harry estimated that taking on the entire colony alone could accelerate his progress by about a year. With these thoughts, Harry was now leaning more towards dealing with the acromantula colony by himself rather than informing others. But first, he needed to prepare gathering items to slow down the large group and making arrangements to protect himself from potential harm. Chapter 108, Preparing for the Spider Siege. After getting ready for his classes back in his dorm, Harry skipped breakfast in the Great Hall and headed straight to the castle kitchens instead. His stomach was growling, and he needed a big meal to satisfy his hunger. Preferring not to draw attention in the public dining area with his hearty appetite and the need to eat quickly due to the lack of time, Harry opted for the privacy of the kitchens. Following his morning classes, Harry found himself with some free time. Not having to attend the History of Magic class in the afternoon and no other classes afterward, he had the perfect opportunity to prepare for the upcoming night's challenges. He headed straight for the Room of Requirement, where he had been working on the Vanishing Cabinet. Harry had already repaired the cabinet and successfully tested its transport mechanism with food and small animals. He had initially planned to test the cabinet with larger animals before attempting to use it himself. However, pressed for time and needing to gather supplies for his planned confrontation, he decided to take the risk and step through the cabinet himself. If anything went wrong, he knew he could always use apparition to escape to safety, much like the unlucky character in the canon. Upon entering the cabinet and shutting the door behind him, Harry experienced a momentary flash of light. When it subsided, a door materialized in front of him. He opened it to find himself in an unoccupied room in the Black Castle, exactly where he had installed the other vanishing cabinet. Harry was particularly impressed with this mode of transportation. Unlike operating, elf travel, or using a porte-carte, which was a little disorienting or uncomfortable, traveling via the vanishing cabinet was seamless and smooth. It was the most comfortable long-distance travel method he had ever experienced, devoid of the usual magical travel side effects. After stepping out of the empty room, Harry decided to give Lord Black a surprise visit. He found the older man busy in his study. To avoid startling him too much, Harry politely knocked before entering. "Ah, Harry? Have you managed to fix the vanishing cabinet already?" Arcturus asked, looking up from his papers. "I was curious who was coming through at this unexpected hour." "Yes, grandfather. I'm surprised you're not more surprised to see me." "I'm supposed to be at Hogwarts right now," Harry responded with a light smile. Arcturus chuckled lightly, "My boy, after all I've seen, very little surprises me anymore. How did you find traveling with the vanishing cabinet?" "I love it," Harry replied enthusiastically. "It's the smoothest travel method I've experienced. You should try it sometime. Maybe take a trip to Hogwarts, relieve some memories." "No need for that, Harry," Arcturus replied firmly. "If I feel the need to visit Hogwarts, I will do so openly. The school governors wouldn't dare deny me entry. Now, you should head back to school. I don't approve of skipping classes, even for magical experimentation." Understanding the seriousness in his grandfather's tone, Harry nodded in agreement and left the room. "Harry, Myra help me sell these things later. Don't haggle too much, just sell them at different places. No need to search for the best price." "Myra, yes, Master Harry." Once outside, Harry quickly summoned Myra to take care of the spoils of his morning encounter with the acromantulas. "Myra, I need these items sold later. Don't spend too much time bargaining, just make sure we get fair prices and spread the sales across different places," Harry instructed carefully. "Of course, Master Harry," Myra replied. Harry continued, "For now, there's something else I need your help with. I need to gather some supplies, and I need them quickly. It'll be faster if we both handle it." Harry then took a moment to write down 2 lists, one for Myra and another for himself. They planned to split up to efficiently gather everything needed. To keep a low profile, Harry disguised himself to ensure no one would recognize him as a Hogwarts student out of school. After about 2 hours of shopping and gathering, Harry had all the supplies packed. He then returned to Hogwarts discreetly, using the vanishing cabinet to transport himself and the supplies back to the castle safely. That evening, after parting ways with his dorm mates Roger and Reggie who were heading to the Great Hall for the feast, Harry quietly left the castle. Covered by several stealth spells and hidden beneath his invisibility cloak, Harry cautiously approached the acromantula colony to observe any changes. He noticed that the number of acromantulas had increased since the morning. Among them stood a particularly massive acromantula, whose legs spanned about 15 feet. Harry figured this giant spider must be the leader of this new colony, expelled for challenging its ancestor, Aragog. This giant acromantula was surrounded by about 50 large ones, 100 of medium size, and countless smaller ones. The colony seemed larger and more threatening than it had in the morning, but Harry was focused on the 150 larger ones as the primary threat. The acromantulas seemed highly agitated, likely upset over the morning's confrontation and the disappearance of some of their members. Harry felt his earlier suspicions were correct, the acromantulas were organizing, possibly preparing to attack the castle. Harry thought their plan was foolish. Just a few Hogwarts professors could easily repel or even decimate such a colony. He speculated that this was why Aragog had exiled these more radical spiders. Knowing that an attack on the school would be unwise, Aragog might have sent these rebellious members away, effectively dooming them for their unwillingness to heed reason. After ensuring no additional acromantulas were approaching, Harry began setting up traps around the area. These traps were crucial, they might give him a fighting chance against the massive colony. While confident in his abilities to take on smaller groups, Harry knew that facing such a large number of these creatures could lead to defeat if they all attacked at once. He considered using a destructive spell like Fiend Fire to obliterate them completely, but he dismissed the idea. Such a spell would draw unwanted attention, and it wasn't his intention to cause widespread destruction. With his preparations complete, Harry dressed for the upcoming battle as night fell. He donned a specially designed combat suit that covered him from head to toe, shielding him from acromantula venom. The suit included dragon hide reinforcements at vital points to protect against the spider's sharp legs. Every part of his body was protected, except his face. Next, Harry worked on a disguise for his face. Anticipating a prolonged fight where he might be spotted, he needed to conceal his identity effectively. After several attempts, he crafted a look that resembled Godric Gryffindor, aligning with the fact he would wield the Gryffindor family sword in battle. This appearance would not only protect his identity but also fit the theme of his armament. Should anyone see him, it would add a layer of mystique and leave them guessing about his true identity. With all his preparations in place, Harry awaited the cover of darkness, ready for what could be the most intense battle of his life. He felt a mix of nerves and confidence, knowing he had the means to escape if the situation turned dire. Fueled by the potential gains for his night training, Harry set aside any doubts. This battle was necessary, not just for the safety of Hogwarts, but as a crucial step in strengthening himself. Chapter 109, Battle at the Forest's Edge. As the evening shadows deepened across the Hogwarts landscape, Harry Potter took up a calculated position, hidden on the side of the acromantula colony closest to the school. The entire area was cast in the quiet darkness typical of a forest at night. It was Halloween, and Harry was well aware that the Great Hall would be alive with celebration, filled with students and teachers alike, immersed in the annual feast. This festive distraction left the borders of the forest unattended and unnaturally silent. Ideally, Harry wished for a peaceful night without any disturbances from the acromantulas. He was fully prepared to defend if necessary, but he secretly hoped that the night would pass without incident, allowing him to return to his dormitory quietly. Engaging in small, controlled skirmishes, like those he had encountered that morning, was far more appealing to him. These smaller conflicts were not only safer but also more beneficial for practicing and advancing his night training. Unfortunately, it appeared that fortune was not on his side this evening. After just a half hour of tense observation, Harry began to detect troubling activity among the acromantulas. The spiders were clearly organizing themselves, their movements becoming increasingly purposeful. It was evident they were preparing for something significant, likely an imminent assault on the school grounds. The level of activity was a clear signal that an attack could be expected soon. Harry, accepting that a clash was unavoidable, moved from his hiding spot and stood boldly before the vast array of towering spiders. He needed to lure the entire colony into a specific area where he had strategically placed traps earlier, hoping to ensnare as many as possible in one fell swoop. As Harry made his presence known, the already vigilant acromantulas turned their full attention toward him. Hundreds of small, gleaming eyes stared at him, creating a chilling picture in the dim moonlight. The sight of so many large spiders arrayed before him was daunting, even for Harry, who had been preparing from a young age for future confrontations with dark forces. The sheer number and size of these creatures would have given anyone pause. Yet, despite their overwhelming numbers and formidable appearance, the spiders did not move into attack. They seemed to be waiting for a signal or command from their leader. The leader's size made it stand out starkly against the lesser members of its colony. The giant spider's presence commanded attention, and it was clear that the other acromantulas were deferring to it, waiting for its lead before they made any move against Harry. Unexpectedly, the colossal spider addressed Harry. "Are you the pest who intruded here this morning?" It boomed, its voice echoing through the stillness of the forest. Startled to hear it speak, Harry replied, "You can speak." "Of course," the leader scoffed. "Do you think they would follow me instead of that old fool Aragog if I couldn't?" Harry couldn't help but retort, "To me, you're the fool. Do you actually believe your small group can challenge a whole school filled with wizards?" The giant spider seemed to find amusement mixed with irritation at Harry's boldness. "I am not a fool. I have a plan," it claimed confidently. "And what might that plan be?" "We have the greatest wizard in our school who could defeat you effortlessly," Harry challenged. The acromantula leader then revealed, "Who says we're going to attack directly? My experience battling the Centaur tribe has taught me much. I will employ their tactics against you and claim this area for the acromantulas." Harry immediately understood that this leader was a typical villain, overly assured in his strategy and underestimating his opponents. "If I were you, I would have dealt with the centaurs first, then taken over the forest, and only afterward targeted the school." "Attacking the school first is a fool's errand," Harry advised mockingly. The leader hissed, "The centaurs know our tactics, but you wizards are ignorant of real combat. It's simpler to confront you first. Enough of this chatter, I know you're just trying to extract my strategy. I won't disclose any more, lest you have a hidden helper." Harry smirked. "I already know your plan. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? You plan to infiltrate the castle, using smaller spiders to scout hiding spots, then strike from the shadows like cowards. It's a decent strategy, but you're bound to fail." Enraged by Harry's accurate guess, the Acromantula leader bellowed, "Since you know my strategy, I cannot allow you to leave. Everyone, attack!" Before the Acromantulas could even start their charge, Harry was already in action. He quickly activated the traps he had prepared earlier. With a swift movement of his wrist, the quiet of the night was shattered by loud explosions. Projectiles soared through the air, each bursting and releasing a sticky, green, gooey slime that spread quickly over the area, capturing the Acromantulas in its grip and significantly slowing them down. In the midst of their confusion and slow movements, Harry didn't waste any time. He launched another well-aimed projectile directly at the leader of the Acromantulas. This wasn't just any projectile, it was a special enchanted item that Harry had prepared with multiple stun spells. He was certain this would keep the leader incapacitated for a considerable period. With the colony's leader temporarily out of the fight, Harry confidently pulled out his sword, ready for close combat. The battle that ensued was intense and demanding. To deal with the large numbers of Acromantulas, Harry summoned a flaming orb that floated beside him. This orb of fire was instrumental, burning away any webs and venom that the Acromantulas hurled at him, and it also served to frighten some of the smaller spiders. Harry moved swiftly and decisively across the battlefield. His sword gleamed in the dim light, each swing cutting through the Acromantulas with precision. With the leader down, the remaining spiders were disorganized and fearful, which made it easier for Harry to slice through their ranks. As the battle raged on, Harry felt the surge of strength and vitality he participated in this battle for. It was clear that the intense physical exertion and the demands of the fight were accelerating his knight training. This real battle was pushing him towards becoming a true knight, enhancing his skills and endurance. Harry noticed a marked improvement in his swordsmanship as well. Each successive slash of his sword became smoother and more efficient. He was now executing combinations of strikes with seamless precision, not missing a single beat. Even as Acromantulas attempted to counterattack, Harry skillfully blocked their moves, maintaining control over the battle and steadily reducing the number of his foes. As the night progressed, Harry gradually reduced the number of his enemies. Just when it seemed he was about to win, something unexpected happened. Unbeknownst to Harry, the Acromantula leader had recovered from its stun state sooner than Harry had anticipated. His stun orb hadn't been enough to keep such a massive creature incapacitated for long. Harry had made a calculation error. The leader of the Acromantulas, driven by desperation, waited for the perfect moment to attack Harry, aiming to catch him off guard and deliver a potentially fatal blow. It had observed the battle and knew it couldn't defeat this wizard in a direct confrontation. While Harry was busy dealing with the other Acromantulas, he didn't notice the leader's approach until it was almost too late. The giant spider attacked with 4 of its legs. Harry managed to block 2 with his sword and scorched another with his flaming orb, but he couldn't stop the 4th leg. The impact of the attack knocked Harry back, and he crashed into a tree. When he tried to stand, he felt a sharp pain in his leg and realized it was fractured. Fortunately, his dragon hide armor had protected him from cuts and the spider's venom, so he didn't have to worry about poisoning. The Acromantula leader, also in pain from its burnt leg, paused its attack, glaring at Harry with rage. Realizing he couldn't continue to fight effectively with his sword due to his injury, Harry decided it was time to end the battle quickly. He put away his sword and drew a second wand. With both wands in hand, he unleashed a torrent of spells. He bombarded the remaining Acromantulas with explosive curses and waves of fiery magic, moving as little as possible to avoid aggravating his injury. The battle quickly came to an end. The forest floor was strewn with the remains of the defeated Acromantulas, and the leader lay among them, its ambitious plans crushed by Harry's relentless assault. Harry didn't allow the leader any final words or a chance to hurl insults. The end for the Acromantula leader was swift. Harry was careful to preserve most of its body, knowing it would be valuable. Had the leader not attempted the surprise attack earlier, it might have survived a bit longer, but that attack led to its rapid death. The once chaotic battlefield was now silent, marked only by signs of the recent struggle. As Harry surveyed the area, his immediate concern was his own well-being. His leg, which had been fractured during the fight, throbbed with a steady, painful pulse, a stark reminder of the battle's ferocity. He realized that he couldn't stay in the forest much longer. Medical attention was crucial to prevent any permanent damage. Although the battle hadn't gone perfectly and he hadn't advanced his night training more than he had expected, Harry felt content with the progress he had made. He wasn't one to be overly greedy. The physical toll of the fight had left him drained, but he knew he needed to tend to secure the valuable spoils before he could seek treatment for his injury and have a good night's sleep. Chapter 110, The Centaur Encounter. Despite his injuries and fatigue, Harry knew he couldn't leave the battlefield just yet. He had to clean up and collect the valuable spoils from the fight. The task was important not only to prevent any evidence that could trace back to him but also to utilize the resources from the fallen creatures. First, Harry quickly created a makeshift splint from twigs he conjured with his wand and applied basic first aid spells to stabilize his leg. Once his leg was somewhat manageable, he moved on to the task of gathering the spoils of the battle. He began with the huge body of the Acromantula colony leader. Harry realized that, since the creature could speak, it likely had a name, though he had never gotten the chance to learn it. The venom of such a large Acromantula was extremely valuable in the wizarding world, and Harry was careful to collect every possible drop. He meticulously extracted the venom, ensuring not to waste a single drop due to its high demand among potion makers. After collecting the venom, Harry packed all the other valuable parts from the Acromantula leader. He stored them in a specially brought trunk, designed to hold and preserve such rare materials. Harry felt a twinge of regret as he worked. He wished he had the chance to engage in a proper sword fight with the Acromantula leader for the combat experience it would have offered. However, given his condition then, particularly after the surprise attack that had injured him, he knew it was wise to end the battle quickly rather than risk further injury by prolonging the fight for the sake of experience. In the dangerous environment of the Forbidden Forest, safety was paramount and lingering could lead to more unexpected dangers. With the leader's remains securely packed away, Harry then shifted his focus to the other larger Acromantulas. The smaller ones had been completely incinerated during the battle, leaving behind no remains to collect. However, the larger Acromantulas still held valuable materials. As Harry was busy gathering materials from the larger Acromantula carcasses, the sudden sound of hooves echoed through the forest, causing him to pause and ready himself for more potential trouble. With swift reflexes, he pulled out his wands, prepared to face another threat. Out of the forest shadows, a group of centaurs appeared. These creatures, with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a horse, had a stern look on their faces and bows at the ready. They were known residents of the Forbidden Forest and were looking at Harry with clear suspicion, their bodies tensed as if ready to leap into action. The leader among them, a robust centaur with an authoritative air, was the first to speak. "Who are you? Did you kill the new Acromantula colony here?" Harry responded without hesitation, "Yes, I did." "What brings you centaurs here? This isn't close to your usual territory." The centaur leader, introducing himself as Doran, explained, "We heard about a new Acromantula colony and came to monitor them." Harry stated plainly, "I've already taken care of them. They're all gone. Now, I'd appreciate it if you'd let me finish up here. I'm collecting what's left from the battle." However, one of the centaurs, visibly upset by Harry's demeanor and actions, accused him sharply, "How dare you conduct battles in the forest, endangering our home? Dumbledore has made agreements with us that no humans are to interfere with the forest's affairs." Harry retorted strongly, "I don't care about any agreements. Those Acromantulas posed a direct threat to the school, and I eliminated that threat." The centaur shot back, "We could have managed them ourselves. What right do you have to interfere?" Harry then revealed his sword, adorned with the emblem of Gryffindor, and declared, "I am a descendant of one of Hogwarts' founders. It's my duty to protect this school from any threat, including you, if necessary." The situation grew tense as the angry centaur drew his bow, aiming an arrow directly at Harry. "I don't trust you, humans. Leave this forest immediately and never return," he demanded sternly. Harry, undeterred, firmly stated, "I'll leave once I've collected my spoils. And I'll return whenever it's necessary. You can't stop me." His tone was calm but firm, indicating he was not intimidated by their numbers. The angry centaur, unconvinced and still hostile, responded, "You're just one injured wizard, and we are 8 battle-ready centaurs. You stand no chance against us." At that moment, the other centaurs, except for Doran, raised their bows, ready to support their fellow centaur. Harry, showing no sign of fear, warned them, "Are you sure you want to start this? My injury doesn't limit my ability to cast spells." Without waiting for another word, Harry summoned 2 massive fiend fires, controlling them with intense concentration to ensure they didn't spread uncontrollably. Seeing the potential for a disastrous fire, Doran quickly intervened. "Stop, Bane. We're not here to fight. Please, human, put away those monstrous flames. We don't want to see our forest burned down. We acknowledge that you're not looking for a fight either, so please, control your magic." The standoff, tense and filled with potential for conflict, hung in the balance as both sides considered their next moves in the quiet of the darkened forest. Harry, realizing that it was not the best time to make enemies with the centaurs, spoke up to de-escalate the situation. "I don't want to fight you," he said firmly. "But I won't tolerate any provocations either. Since you initiated this standoff, lower your bows first, and send that centaur, Bane, back to your group. I find his attitude unsettling." Upon their leader's signal, the centaurs lowered their bows, and Bane, though visibly upset and muttering under his breath, retreated towards their group. Witnessing this, Harry extinguished the giant fires he had summoned, showing his willingness to reduce tensions. Harry then attempted to smooth things over by saying, "I apologize for the damage caused to the forest during my battle with the acromantulas. Given my injuries, I had to act decisively, but I assure you it won't happen again." Doran, the centaur leader, while still wary, acknowledged Harry's apology. "Your actions have complicated things for us," he explained. "Though these acromantula colonies are divided, they still communicate. The destruction of this one will likely make the main colony more aggressive. We have refrained from attacking them for this very reason." Harry responded confidently, "If they become a problem, I'll handle it. I was actually hoping for a more challenging fight to gain some combat experience." This was too brief. Doran warned, "Your desire for battle is reckless. Such confrontations could wreak havoc on the forest, which we must protect at all costs." "I intend to use only my sword in the future," Harry promised. "Today's injury was a result of my carelessness. Normally, my sword is all I need." "We must insist that you adhere to that promise," Doran stated firmly. "We cannot allow our home to be destroyed by careless use of powerful spells. If it comes to that, we will defend our territory, even if it costs us dearly." "I understand," Harry replied. "Please go now. I'll be leaving soon as well. Just make sure your people keep their distance. If anyone attacks me without provocation, I will defend myself without hesitation." With a nod, Doran led the centaurs away from the scene. Harry waited a few minutes to make sure they were truly gone before he continued to pack up the remains of his battle. Harry felt somewhat relieved to have met the centaurs, despite the initial tension. Although their first interaction was rocky, Harry knew that during his remaining years at Hogwarts, he would likely encounter them again while exploring the forest. Starting some form of relationship was beneficial in the long run. Moreover, Harry had a long-term goal to ensure the safety of the forest surrounding Hogwarts. He planned to either eliminate or relocate all dangerous creatures within the forest by the time he graduated. It was irresponsible to allow such threats to linger near a school filled with curious and sometimes reckless students. In achieving this, Harry recognized that he might need the cooperation of the centaurs, who knew the forest better than anyone else. Establishing a mutual understanding now could be crucial for his future endeavors in maintaining the safety of the Hogwarts grounds. Harry wasted no time in packing up all the spoils of war and meticulously cleaning the battlefield of any traces that might lead back to him. He was thorough in his efforts to remove the sticky slime that had ensnared the acromantulas, ensuring nothing of the sort was left behind. Using a few more spells, he worked to restore the forest area to its normal state as quickly as possible before making his departure. Despite his need for medical attention, Harry knew he couldn't just walk into the Hogwarts infirmary without having to answer a barrage of questions about his injuries. His knowledge in healing magic, though growing since he had started learning it this year, was still not enough to fully treat a fracture on his own, especially if he wanted a quick and complete recovery. Knowing he needed to be back in top form by the next morning, Harry decided he would need help from outside Hogwarts. As he reached the edge of the forest, he removed the disguise he had used during the battle with the acromantulas and his encounter with the centaurs and draped himself once again in his invisibility cloak. He moved slowly and carefully, mindful of his injured leg and using several stabilizing spells to ensure he did not aggravate the injury further. It was still early in the night, just 9 o'clock. The grand Halloween feast had ended, and the curfew was now in effect, but it wasn't too late for Harry to sneak out of school to seek the needed medical treatment. With deliberate, cautious steps, Harry headed towards the castle and the room of hidden things where the vanishing cabinet still rested. His pace was slow, giving him ample time to think about the night's events. As he walked, he replayed the battle in his mind, critically analyzing each move and decision, pondering what he could have done differently, and where he might have made mistakes. This reflection was crucial for his growth not just as a wizard but as a fighter who had just faced one of his most challenging battles yet. Chapter 111, Aftermath and Nightly Hunts. After a slow and cautious walk through the school, using the stairs to reach the room of hidden things, Harry finally reached the vanishing cabinet. Given his current condition, using the cabinet was the safest and quickest way to travel. He considered going to Hogsmeade and calling Myra from there, but using the cabinet meant he wouldn't have to walk all the way to the village, which would take too much time and effort given his injured state. Harry then used the vanishing cabinet to swiftly transport himself to the Black Castle. Upon his arrival there, Harry immediately summoned Myra. He instructed her to quickly fetch Emma for medical assistance. Harry chose to call Emma instead of simply using the Skelgro potion available in the castle to treat his fracture. Although mending bones was generally straightforward, he wanted to make sure he didn't have any other, less apparent injuries. The powerful blow he had received from the Acromantula leader was intense, and Harry wanted a comprehensive examination to ensure no underlying issues were overlooked. Harry also specifically asked Myra to make sure not to disturb Grandpa Black. It was late at night, and Harry didn't want to cause any unnecessary stress for the old man, especially over something he could manage with Emma's help. Within just a few minutes, Emma arrived at the castle. Her expression was filled with concern as she quickly stepped into her role as a healer. Without wasting time on asking useless questions, she began to assess Harry's condition with a series of diagnostic spells. Upon discovering that the main concern was simply a fracture, Emma's anxiety lessened somewhat, although she continued to carefully check Harry's overall physical and magical exhaustion. These were minor compared to the fracture, but still required her professional attention to ensure there were no other complications. Relieved to find that these were the extent of Harry's problems, Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders, glad that Harry had not sustained any serious harm. She then sent Myra to fetch the necessary potions from her home supplies. This included a Skelgro potion to mend Harry's bones and a few other potions to address his magical exhaustion. Physical tiredness, she noted, would resolve with a good meal and rest. While waiting for Myra to return with the potions, Emma pressed Harry for details about his injury. She was puzzled why Harry, for a fracture, hadn't simply visited the Hogwarts hospital wing, where the matron, Madame Pomfrey, was exceptionally skilled in healing injuries. She was also curious about how Harry had managed to leave Hogwarts during school hours. Even with apparition it was difficult since it required going out of the locked Hogwarts gates and reaching Hogsmeade. Harry, trusting Emma fully, didn't hold back any details. He excitedly explained how the vanishing cabinet provided a direct and extraordinary method of travel between Hogwarts and his home, which he could use daily if he wished. He even invited Emma to use it if she ever wanted to visit Hogwarts for a nostalgic trip, though she declined, stating she had no need for such a visit. Harry then showed Emma some of the Acromantula remains he had brought with him and explained all about his battle with the Acromantulas. He explained that during his training, he had stumbled upon an Acromantula colony dangerously close to Hogwarts and had decided to eliminate the threat himself that night. He recounted the battle, omitting the riskier parts of his tactics and focusing on the necessity of his actions given the immediate threat to the school. He confessed that he undertook the risk partly because of the benefits it brought to his night training journey. Emma, while impressed by Harry's courage and capability, couldn't help but scold him for the risks he had taken. She reminded him sternly of the dangers of facing such formidable creatures alone. However, Emma was intrigued by his progress with the night-breathing technique, which Harry claimed was the main reason he had chosen to handle the situation without backup. Her examination showed that Harry had significantly increased his physical strength nearly 2.5 times stronger than when he started his training. This progress was astonishing, and Emma found no evidence of any negative side effects, which was a relief. When Myra returned with the healing potions, she popped away again to begin preparing a nutritious meal for her master, Harry, knowing that proper nourishment was crucial for his recovery. Then, Emma administered the Skelgro potion and reassured Harry that his leg would fully heal by the morning, provided he kept the makeshift splint intact. After ensuring Harry was stable and seeing no other health issues, Emma left the castle, cautioning Harry once more to be more careful in the future. Emma also extracted a promise from Harry to let her conduct a thorough investigation into the night-breathing technique during his next school break. It was a great topic for her next research. After enjoying a hearty meal prepared by Myra, Harry felt significantly better and fully restored. With his strength regained, Harry returned to Hogwarts and found himself back in the room of hidden things. There, he focused on securing the vanishing cabinet, placing strong magical wards around it to prevent anyone from accidentally finding it and using it to discover the secret passage to the Black Castle. Harry did consider moving the cabinet to a more secure location in the future, such as the Chamber of Secrets, because it was more isolated and harder to access. However, for the time being, he felt that the room of hidden things was obscure enough to serve as a temporary safeguard. He remembered from the books that the Weasley twins wouldn't stumble upon the cabinet for another 5 years, which reassured him that the location was relatively safe. Despite this, Harry remained aware that the cabinet's connection to the Black Castle was a potential vulnerability that needed careful monitoring to ensure the safety of his sanctuary. Once he was done securing the vanishing cabinet, Harry made his way back to the Ravenclaw Tower. Upon entering his dormitory, he found his roommates already deep in sleep. Exhaustion soon took over Harry too, and he quickly fell into a deep, peaceful sleep, feeling secure and at ease for the first time since the day began. The following morning, Harry woke up to find his leg completely healed, thanks to the potions and care he had received. A wave of relief swept through him as he realized that with the Acromantula threat now behind him, he could look forward to the rest of the school year. He looked forward to a peaceful and productive school year at Hogwarts without any looming dangers. That very evening, feeling responsible for ensuring that no threats remained near Hogwarts, Harry put on the same disguise again and went back to the Forbidden Forest to check the area. He unexpectedly ran into the same group of centaurs he had encountered the previous day. This time, they were facing off against a group of stray Acromantulas. Harry didn't waste any time. He jumped into action, quickly using his sword to eliminate the Acromantulas. He was keen on gaining more experience and also eager to gather valuable Acromantula parts. This time he also collected the webs. Harry had learned from Myra that these webs were in high demand in the market for crafting strong silk robes, which were not only durable but also valuable. After the brief fight, the centaurs quickly left the scene. They showed little interest in forming any kind of relationship with Harry, maintaining their distance as they departed. Harry didn't mind their coldness, his main concern was that they didn't threaten him or interfere with his actions. Motivated by the night's events, Harry decided to make nightly patrols of the forest a regular part of his routine. Each night for an hour, he would wander the forest edges, vigilant for any Acromantulas that ventured too close to the school grounds. He was careful, however, to steer clear of the main colony. Harry knew that directly challenging Aragog and his followers could lead to significant complications, particularly if Hagrid or Dumbledore became involved. Harry planned to eventually confront Aragog and his clan, but he knew the timing had to be right. It would be safer to wait until Dumbledore was preoccupied with more pressing issues, likely after Voldemort's return. This strategic patience was aimed at avoiding unnecessary complications and ensuring that when he did act, it would be under circumstances that allowed for a decisive and uninterrupted resolution. Chapter 112, Quiet Days and End of Second Year. As the school year pressed on, Harry found himself immersed in various activities. One of his main responsibilities was tutoring Nymphadora Tonks every weekend, who had started to regret permitting Harry to call her by using her full name, a fact Harry exploited a lot to inject a bit of humor into their classes. Despite the playful teasing, Tonks appreciated Harry's teaching methods, which she found far superior to those of any defense against the dark arts teacher she had encountered at Hogwarts. Harry's approach was practical rather than theoretical, which suited Tonks perfectly as it aligned well with her hands-on learning style. Harry was equally pleased with Tonks' progress. She was a quick learner, picking up spells faster than any of his other peers he had casually taught. This made Harry quite confident that Tonks would get an outstanding grade in her defense against the dark arts newts, provided she managed the theoretical part on her own. While Harry could teach spells and combat techniques, memorizing details about dark creatures and their characteristics for the written exams was something Tonks had to tackle by herself. Beyond his tutoring duties, Harry dedicated significant time to mastering healing magic. The events of Halloween night had highlighted the necessity of this skill for him, especially given Harry's penchant for adventure and the inherent risks involved. Though he continued to study warding and curse breaking, healing had become a priority. Harry's nightly forays into the Forbidden Forest were an ongoing adventure, lasting about an hour each evening. The local Acromantula population, which wanted to take revenge for the destruction of the other colony, now had given up and tended to flee at the sight of Harry brandishing his sword. It was a testament to the reputation Harry had quickly built as a formidable presence in the forest. While his interactions with the centaurs hadn't progressed beyond cautious neutrality, the absence of conflict was a positive sign for Harry. He didn't actively seek their friendship, and maintaining peace was enough for now. These forest excursions weren't always filled with combat. Harry enjoyed the opportunity to observe other magical creatures that inhabited the forest, such as unicorns, blast-ended screwits, thestrals, and hippogriffs. These encounters added a layer of wonder to his nightly activities, enriching his experience of the magical world. Back at Hogwarts, the school year was unusually calm. The faculty and students alike were relieved to have a year free from chaos and danger. The only drawback was the lackluster performance of the defense against the dark arts professor. If not for this weak link in the faculty, the year might have been perfect for everyone, marked by a peaceful atmosphere that allowed students the freedom to explore and learn without the usual backdrop of fear and uncertainty that had characterized previous years. In December, the Weasley twins suddenly remembered the prank war they had declared against Harry at the start of the year. By that time, Harry was busy with more important matters and had lost interest in engaging in petty pranks. Harry this year had largely stopped pranking the school bullies. Most of them had stopped their bullying behavior, especially the smarter Ravenclaws, and those who persisted were now often targeted by the Weasley twins. Due to this, Harry only resorted to an occasional prank to deal with the most stubborn bullies. To ensure the Weasley twins didn't turn their prank efforts against him, Harry devised a clever spell. He cast a charm that made the twins' hair turn shiny gold whenever they came close to any of the school bullies or particularly strict professors. This transformation reminded everyone of the embarrassing prank from the opening feast, which many were keen to forget, and often provoked anger. This not only diverted the bullies' attention towards the twins but also kept the twins so busy with the retaliatory pranks that they left Harry and the potential bullying victims in peace. The twins, proud as they were, refused to seek help from a professor to reverse the spell on their hair. They were determined to figure it out on their own. However, the spell Harry used was advanced, and he was quite sure they wouldn't be able to undo it without external help. Secretly, Harry thought they looked quite striking with their shiny golden hair and wouldn't mind if they chose to keep it. The arrival of the Christmas holidays gave Harry a much-needed break, allowing him to step away from the academic pressures and nightly patrols of the Forbidden Forest. Unlike other times of the year when he might study or train, the holidays were a time for Harry to fully relax and have fun, setting aside all thoughts of Hogwarts and its myriad challenges. After enjoying a relaxing break over the holidays, Harry returned to Hogwarts and quickly resumed his usual routine, filled with studies and nightly forest adventures. As the days ticked by, the Quidditch season was drawing to a close. Interestingly, Harry found that his interest in Quidditch was fading. The reason for this change was his significantly enhanced physical capabilities, a result of his advances in the night-breathing technique, particularly strengthened by his encounters with the Acromantulas. He noticed he had become too strong compared to his peers, bloodjares that used to be a threat now seemed harmless, and catching the snitch had become almost too easy. Quidditch had lost the challenge it once posed, and it was no longer fun for him. He even stopped joining his friends for casual games, feeling it was somewhat unfair due to his heightened abilities. Instead, Harry chose to enjoy long, solitary flights on his broom, which still brought him joy. Nevertheless, Harry decided to give his Quidditch career a proper farewell by participating as the Seeker in Ravenclaw's final match of the season against Slytherin. The regular Seeker had opted to focus on his newt studies, giving Harry, as the reserve Seeker, the opportunity to play in what could be his first and last game as Ravenclaw Seeker. This game was more about savoring the experience than the competition. Harry took the time to enjoy the atmosphere of the match, appreciating the cheers from the crowd, which was a thrilling and new experience for him. For much of the game, Harry played leisurely, more engaged in absorbing the festive environment than in seeking the snitch. After having some fun dodging bloodjares launched by the particularly large Slytherin beaters and casually flying around the pitch, greeting the cheering students, Harry eventually spotted the snitch. With effortless grace, he dove for it, caught it swiftly, and brought the game to a quick close. The rush of being the center of attention was exhilarating, yet he confirmed his decision to step away from Quidditch going forward. Despite Ravenclaw's victory in that match, their earlier losses to other houses meant they didn't stand a chance to win the Quidditch Cup. Ultimately, it was Slytherin who took home the cup this year, thanks to having accumulated more points than Gryffindor, who had the same number of wins. Harry's experience in the final game was memorable, but it marked the end of his short Quidditch career. As the school year approached its end and final exams loomed, Harry decided it was time for Nymphadora Tonks to face her graduation test, a rigorous obstacle course he had set up in the Forbidden Forest. The course culminated with a live Acromantula, acting as the final boss, challenging Tonks to apply everything she had learned. This obstacle course was Harry's way of concluding Tonks' training with him, designed to test her on every skill she had acquired under his tutelage. Despite the grueling challenges, Tonks emerged victorious, albeit exhausted and visibly agitated, her metamorphomagus features vividly displaying her emotions with her hair and face turning a fiery red as she stormed out of the forest. Harry had injected a bit of mischief into the course, which included full-size cutouts of various people continuously chanting Nymphadora repeatedly. Her reaction was immediate and fierce. She demolished each cutout with a burst of angry magic, much to Harry's amusement. Also, despite all of Harry's training, some of Tonks' natural clumsiness remained. She tripped over several obstacles, one of which involved an extraordinarily sticky glue trap that took her considerable effort to escape. However, her performance against the Acromantula was impressive. Harry watched with pride as she tackled the giant spider skillfully and independently, managing to overcome it without any assistance on her first encounter. After allowing her some time to cool down from the heat of her initial frustration, Harry congratulated her. He expressed his confidence in her preparedness for the rigorous demands of Auror training, feeling assured that she was now ready to face whatever challenges that career might throw at her. With the obstacle course behind her, Tonks, like all other 7th-year students, shifted her focus entirely to her upcoming NEWT exams. The following weeks were going to be hectic for her and her year mates. Exam time quickly arrived, and Harry breezed through his own tests. Tonks also had her NEWTs, and after them, she and her friends got busy with having fun and preparing for the farewells. While the official results were still pending, rumors quickly spread around Hogwarts that Tonks had excelled in her defense against the dark arts practical exam. She reportedly impressed the examiners with her adept handling of various spells. Her performance was notably superior, especially against the backdrop of other students who struggled, highlighting the disparity between her advanced skills and the inadequate teaching from the current Dada professor. Tonks, adhering to a promise she made to Harry, kept quiet about the source of her exceptional training. As the school year came to an end, Ravenclaw House celebrated a significant victory by winning the House Cup. The quiet dedication of its members to earning points, combined with the unfortunate loss of points by other houses for various infractions, played a key role in their triumph. Harry joined his fellow housemates in celebrating this achievement with joy and pride. However, looking ahead, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that the fairness of the House Cup might soon be compromised. Next year, his brother, the boy who lived, would be joining Hogwarts, and Harry anticipated that the unfolding events might mirror those described in the books. He suspected that Dumbledore might begin awarding points in a way that would lead to the Gryffindor house winning the cup every time. However, the House Cup did not matter much to Harry, so even if it happened, it was not going to bother Harry in any way. With the school year wrapped up, Harry was eager to head home for the summer. He was particularly excited about spending time with his new baby brother, Aries Regulus Black, the son of Amelia and Sirius. Although Harry had managed brief visits during the year using the Vanishing Cabinet, he looked forward to enjoying more extended and meaningful bonding time with Aries. While on the Hogwarts Express heading back home, Harry reflected on the past year. It had been a rare peaceful year at Hogwarts, but Harry felt it might be the last one for some time. With the canon events starting next year and Voldemort coming back to the country, Harry knew that his future years at school would be far from peaceful. Chapter 113, Back to Diagon Alley. The Blackbones household was filled with excitement on the bright morning of August 2, 1991. It was an especially thrilling day for Susan Bones, who was practically bouncing with excitement about her upcoming trip to Diagon Alley. This wasn't just any shopping trip today, she would be choosing her very first wand along with her friends Hannah Abbott and Daphne Greengrass. They had planned this important day together, choosing a date that worked for all their families to join in the fun. "I can't wait to start at Hogwarts. It's going to be amazing," Susan said, twirling around the living room with a joyful grin. Amelia watched her with a warm smile, though her voice carried a hint of sadness. "Time really flies. The house will surely seem quieter without you. Just try to stay out of trouble at Hogwarts. I hope your professors won't have any reason to complain about you, dear." Sirius, always one to encourage a bit of mischief, laughed and added, "Oh, lighten up, Amy. Hogwarts is for making lasting memories. A little bit of mischief and a few detentions are part of the fun. Go and enjoy yourself, Susan. And remember, if anyone bothers you, Harry's got your back." Harry, who had come over to celebrate Susan's big day, agreed with a nod. "Exactly, Susan. Don't stress too much about the professors, they're usually reasonable. Just be cautious around some of the older students. But no worries, I'm here if you need anything." Susan's face lit up with excitement and a bit of resolve as she replied enthusiastically, "Yet." Amelia, striving to instill a sense of responsibility, said sternly, "Sirius, Harry, you two aren't helping. Listen, Susan, it's fine to have fun, but don't go causing trouble. I know these two might encourage your antics, but if I get even a whisper of you causing trouble, you'll be answering to me. Got it?" Susan nodded earnestly, "I understand, Auntie." Harry grinned at their conversation and then shifted his attention to the youngest member of the family, little Aries Black, who was just a few months old. He playfully teased the baby, saying, "So, Aries, are you going to be a little mischief maker like your dad, or will you be the strict type like your mum? With Sirius influencing you, I think we know the answer, right?" His words made the baby burst into happy gurgles. As everyone continued getting ready, Creaker and Myra, the house elves, gently took sleepy Aries from Harry's arms. They were tasked with caring for him today, allowing Amelia to attend Susan's special day without worry. If there was an emergency, Amelia knew she could return immediately, but everyone hoped for a smooth and joyful day without any interruptions. Soon enough, the abbots and the green grasses arrived at the manor, ready for the big trip to Diagon Alley. Hannah arrived looking excited, accompanied by her cheerful parents, while Daphne was with her more subdued sister, who seemed a little sad about her sister going off to Hogwarts and their parents. Together, the group made their way to Diagon Alley, using the flow network to reach the Diagon Alley directly. Upon arriving, they were immediately greeted by the lively atmosphere of Diagon Alley on a busy shopping day. The place buzzed with activity, filled with witches and wizards of all ages moving eagerly from one shop to another. First on the agenda, the parents escorted the girls to Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions. Here, they were swiftly measured and fitted for their new Hogwarts uniforms. With the robes sorted, the parents split up to tackle the remaining school supplies list. Poor Astoria was reluctantly pulled away by her mother. It wasn't quite her time to roam freely yet. Now left to their own devices, Susan, Hannah, and Daphne eagerly plunged into the thrills Diagon Alley had to offer. They darted excitedly from shop to shop, each new storefront bringing waves of anticipation and delight. The new Nimbus 2000. "It looks better than Harry's old broom," Susan exclaimed as they passed by quality Quidditch supplies, pointing at the latest broom model which gleamed enticingly in the shop window. Harry had been teaching her a bit about flying, and she had become quite good. Harry wasn't sure if Susan played Quidditch in the original story, but he was confident that she would make the Hufflepuff team with ease. Meanwhile, Hannah was completely captivated by the creatures at the magical menagerie. She pressed her face against the glass, her eyes wide with wonder. "Oh, look at that Niazzle! Isn't it the cutest?" she squealed, her delight clear. Daphne, who had an eye for fashion, led them next into Twilfit and Tattings. She picked up a beautifully embroidered robe and held it against herself, admiring the craftsmanship. "These robes are just divine. Too bad we can't wear them at Hogwarts," she sighed, a bit wistfully. Harry and Sirius, who had been given the responsibility of supervising the girls, trailed behind them at a relaxed pace. They exchanged amused looks as they listened to the girls excitedly chatter about each new discovery and wish list item they came across in the shops. After a few hours, the group's energy finally began to wane, and Sirius seized the opportunity to suggest a break. "How about some ice cream, girls?" he proposed, leading them to Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlor. The girls agreed enthusiastically, grateful for the chance to sit down and enjoy some of Florian's famous treats. Not long after, the adults joined them, their arms heavy with bags filled with all the Hogwarts essentials they had purchased for the upcoming school year. They shared that they had nearly completed the shopping list, with only the wand purchases and a visit to Gringotts remaining. Rejuvenated by the ice cream and the brief rest, the girls were buzzing with excitement again, especially about the upcoming visit to Gringotts. It was not just any visit. They were looking forward to receiving their heir rings, a significant tradition for the young witches who were heirs to their family's lineage. With renewed energy, the group left the ice cream parlor and made their way to Gringotts. The towering, formidable structure of the Wizarding Bank stood impressively against the lively scene of Diagon Alley, commanding respect and awe. Inside, the families split up, each heading to meet with their respective vault managers. Harry, however, found himself with nothing specific to do. He had no errands to run at the bank, so he ended up waiting alone in the vast, ornate lobby of Gringotts. As Harry waited, his mind wandered to the upcoming school year, reflecting on its significance. The year 1991 wasn't just another year, it marked the beginning of the events described in the Harry Potter books, and with Voldemort's looming threat, it promised to be anything but safe. To mark the start of this pivotal year, Harry had taken a unique trip on July 31st to visit the locations made famous in the Harry Potter books and movies. He began with the Dursleys' home at Privet Drive. Disguised to avoid recognition, he discovered the house in ruins, a stark contrast to the home he had once known. Harry hadn't kept up with the Dursleys since his escape from death, preferring to leave that part of his past behind. Curious about their fate, he asked around the neighborhood. The answers confirmed his suspicions but didn't surprise him. Harry was well aware that Cordelia's method of faking his death wasn't flawless. It might have deceived any wizard, but for the Muggle police, who dealt with countless serious cases, the deception was obvious and simple to see through. Sure enough, Harry's suspicions were confirmed. His disappearance had been quickly noticed, and when the Dursleys' explanations didn't add up, the police were called in. They soon discovered the magical dummy meant to represent Harry, which misled them into believing it was his actual corpse. This discovery launched a thorough investigation into how Harry was treated and the supposed circumstances of his death. It didn't take long for the police to unravel the plot, leading to the arrest of Vernon and Petunia Dursley, who were then put on trial. Dudley was sent to live with his Aunt Marge, Vernon's sister, while his parents were incarcerated to serve their sentences. Harry thought their jail time was a bit brief, but he wasn't overly concerned. After serving their time, the Dursleys left the country, according to the neighbors, hoping to start anew somewhere else. The attempt to sell their home at Privet Drive failed. The house's grim history as the site of an abused child's alleged death deterred any potential buyers. Ultimately, the Dursleys had no choice but to abandon the property. Harry felt indifferent about the Dursleys' fate. They had received what they deserved. If they had treated him kindly, or even just decently, he might have been inclined to share his wealth from the wizarding world with them. But as things stood, they were strangers to him. He hoped that in their new lives abroad, they would learn from their past mistakes and treat others with humanity. Standing outside the house, Harry gazed at it for a few minutes. There was no desire to enter, the house held no fond memories or sentimental value for him. With a final look, he turned away to continue his journey, leaving behind the echoes of his past with the Dursleys. Next, Harry visited the zoo where the famous scene of the boa constrictor's release took place in the original story. He found the snake and watched it quietly for a few minutes. It was sleeping peacefully, and Harry felt no desire to disturb it or attempt to free it as in the canon. He knew the snake was dangerous and, having been raised in captivity, it wouldn't survive if released into the wild. After leaving the zoo, Harry set out to find the Shack on the Rock, a place Vernon Dursley had once rented to escape the wizarding world. It wasn't easy to locate. Harry had to check several rental agencies and explore various potential locations before he managed to locate the shack. Although unimportant, he felt compelled to visit it as part of reliving the canon. Harry's day out was mainly about visiting the places mentioned in the books, while also satisfying his curiosity about how the changes he had influenced were shaping his world compared to the original narrative in the books. He wanted to see these places for himself to reaffirm that he was in control of his own destiny and that no higher powers were manipulating his path to make it align with the canon events. Harry felt very content with the changes he had made. He believed that the world was much better now than it had been portrayed in the stories. One of the biggest improvements was that Sirius now had a complete and happy family. This reassured Harry that the alterations he had brought about were positive, proving that his interventions had led to a happier outcome for those he cared about. As he was lost in his thoughts, a commotion in the usually quiet bank snapped Harry back to reality. Turning around, he saw a family of 3 emerging from the bank's inner corridors. Recognizing them but wishing to avoid any interaction, Harry quickly considered his options for slipping away unnoticed. Chapter 114, The Potter Encounter. In the bustling lobby of Gringotts, Harry was almost out the door when he was spotted by the Potter family. The atmosphere shifted suddenly, charged with tension. Harry had hoped to slip away unnoticed, but Lily Potter's voice, full of urgency, stopped him in his tracks. "Harry? Is that you, Harry? Please wait. Don't leave," she called out across the quiet hall. Her plea caught the attention of those around them. Onlookers, recognizing Charles, quickly deduced they were looking at the family of the boy who lived. Whispers began to fill the air, and curious eyes turned toward Lily and Harry. Harry stopped for a moment, considering his next move. He could have just walked away, continued on his path, and ignored the call. However, he realized it might be time to face what he had been avoiding. Avoiding this confrontation wasn't going to change anything, and it was better to face them sooner than later. Turning around, Harry faced his estranged parents. Now, standing before them, Harry could really see how little they had changed since that night. Lily and James Potter looked similar to how they always had, except now they were dressed in more fashionable clothes compared to the battle-ready attire they wore during the war days. Ignoring his parents for a moment, Harry observed his brother, Charles Potter, for the first time since many years ago. If one were to imagine the Harry from the books but a bit chubbier and well-fed, that would be Charles. Charles and James wore identical spectacles. Behind those spectacles he had his mother's green eyes and the characteristic Potter messy hair which Harry was all too glad to have left behind. There was also the famous wand scar on his forehead from that night which made him so well known. Charles looked confused, not understanding why his mother was calling out to a stranger. "Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Potter," Harry greeted them formally, keeping his tone neutral. James Potter frowned slightly. "Mr. and Mrs. Potter? Is that how you are going to address us? I know we've made mistakes, but holding a grudge for so long isn't right. You turned out fine, right? No lasting damage." Harry's expression hardened. "No lasting damage? Is that really what you think? I'm here today because of luck and the help from some very kind people, not because you made sure I was okay." He paused, taking a deep breath to steady his voice. "Do you think this crowded place is the right spot to discuss our family issues? I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want our conversation to become tomorrow's front-page news." James opened his mouth to respond, possibly to argue, but he stopped himself as he took in the surrounding crowd of onlookers. Realizing the privacy of their conversation was compromised, he gestured towards a private meeting room that Gringotts provided for confidential matters. Understanding the need for discretion, they all moved towards the room, away from the curious eyes of the public. Inside the quiet room, Lily made an attempt to mend their relationship. "Harry, we're really sorry. Can you forgive us and come back home with us?" Harry firmly shook his head, his decision clear. "No, and no. Is that all? Can I go now?" "Please, Harry," Lily implored, her eyes welling up with tears. "I regret what we did every single day. Give me a chance to make it right." Harry's voice was cold as he responded, "I don't need you in my life anymore. I have a family now that's complete and makes me happy. When I needed you the most, you weren't there for me. Now, I simply don't need you anymore. But I need you, Harry. I want us to be a family again," Lily continued, her voice full of desperation. Harry looked at her steadily, his expression firm. "You should put down those unrealistic expectations. You chose to abandon me then and now I'm choosing not to come back. I don't need parents anymore. Because of what you did or didn't do I've had to grow up quickly and take care of myself." Seeing the desperate look on Lily's face, Harry sighed and continued, "But I really don't want you bothering me like this again. I'm too busy for your weak excuses. However, I'll give you one chance. I understand that the decision you made back then was under difficult circumstances, and maybe Dumbledore's influence pushed you to. That's somewhat understandable. But if you want me to even consider forgiving you, you'll need to show me that you cared about me after you sent me away. Show me any proof that you didn't just move on and forget about me. Prove that you tried to contact me, that you tried to convince Dumbledore or anyone else to let you bring me back. If you can show me that, then maybe I'll think about reconnecting." Harry paused, letting his words sink in. He watched their faces fall as they realized the implications of what he was asking for. It was clear from their expressions that they hadn't done anything of the sort. Seeing this, Harry added, "If you can't provide that proof, I'll give you another chance. I find it hard to believe that any parent could just give up on their child. Maybe you were manipulated into forgetting me or not caring, like having your memories erased or your emotions suppressed. If you can show me proof of something like that, I'll forgive you right away, because it would mean it wasn't really your fault. But if you can't, it just shows that you never really needed me in your life, and you'd probably just abandon me again for the greater good. It's better if we just forget about fixing our family." Lily began to cry, and James tried to comfort her, but their faces were filled with shame. They had no evidence to offer, nothing to say that could change the harsh truth Harry had laid out. As Harry prepared to leave the room, the sound of his parents crying caught the attention of Charles, who had been quiet until now. Seeing his mother in tears made Charles visibly upset. Just as Harry was about to exit, Charles's young voice broke through the heavy silence. "Who are you? Why are you making Mom cry?" he demanded, his tone filled with confusion and anger. Harry turned to address him. You heard them call me Harry. Do you know who I am? Charles looked puzzled. Should I know you? I've never heard of any Harry. My name is Harry Potter, Harry stated plainly. Potter. Charles turned to his father, bewildered. Dad, didn't you say we don't have any relatives? Who is this guy? Harry asked softly, have they ever mentioned that you have an older brother? Charles's eyes widened in shock. What? I have an older brother. Seeing the surprise and confusion on Charles's face, Harry looked back at his parents, his expression one of deep disappointment. It seems I expected too much from you, Mr. and Mrs. Potter. You can forget about fixing things with me. He doesn't even know he has an older brother? You've hidden my existence from him to protect your image? Even after I returned to the wizarding world, you've kept this secret for over 2 years. This just shows that you don't really regret your actions. You're just trying to cover up your mistakes and ease your own guilt. Lily tried to explain through her tears. No, Harry, it's not like that. We care about you, but we didn't know how to tell Charles about you. Harry responded coldly, just more excuses. You didn't want Charles to see you in a bad light, so you kept me a secret from him. Lily protested weakly, no, that's not it. Lily's tears began to flow again, and James tried to soothe her. Harry watched them without feeling anything. At this moment, Charles, now visibly upset and wanting to protect his mother, pulled out his wand and pointed it at Harry. Leave, or I'll make you leave, Charles said, his voice firm. Harry responded calmly, you're a brave boy. You'll fit right in at Gryffindor with that kind of foolish bravery. But I don't have time for games right now. Goodbye, Potters. I've made my feelings clear. Please leave me alone from now on. Either show me proof, or don't contact me again. With those final words, Harry left the room, casting one last glance at Charles's wand. He noticed that Charles had a very different wand, not the phoenix feather wand that the boy who lived was supposed to have, the one that was Voldemort's twin. Harry reasoned that it made sense, after all, Charles was not the child of prophecy, so there was no mystical reason for that wand to choose him. Besides, the life experiences and character of Tom Riddle and Charles Potter were so different that the Phoenix wand wouldn't choose Charles based on those criteria alone. Harry thought that the only possible way for Charles to have ended up with the Phoenix wand would have been if Dumbledore had interfered in some way, but Harry doubted Dumbledore considered the twin wand important enough at this stage to manipulate its choice. With that thought, Harry quickly returned to the main hall of Gringotts, not giving the Potters another look. He hoped this confrontation was the final closure. Harry was sure they didn't truly care about him, and he felt no need to give them another opportunity to seek his forgiveness. Chapter 115, Countdown to Hogwarts. As Harry stepped out of the private meeting room at Gringotts, relieved to distance himself from the awkward encounter with the Potter family, he noticed that Sirius and the others had returned from their respective visits to the family vault managers. It appeared they had been looking for him, puzzled by his absence at the bank's main entrance. Harry, where did you disappear to? Sirius asked with a mix of concern and curiosity. I needed to have a private chat with some folks. I'll fill you in on everything later, Harry replied, wanting to avoid delving into the details in the crowded hall. Before Sirius could probe further, Susan, Hannah, and Daphne excitedly approached Harry, eager to show off their new ear rings. Each girl flaunted their new ring, Susan with the intricate bones ear ring, Hannah sporting the abbot ear ring, and Daphne proudly displaying the green grass ear ring. The rings were as detailed and significant as the Potter family ring, and the girls were thrilled to officially claim their heritage. Amelia, seeing that Harry had rejoined the group and all business at Gringotts was concluded, shifted focus to the next item on their agenda. Well, now that's sorted, all that's left is to pick up the wands. Are you girls ready? She asked. All three girls responded in unison, yes. Their excitement was palpable as they hurried towards the exit of the bank, their parents quickly following behind them, eager to wrap up their day in Diagon Alley. Walking down the bustling street, the group soon arrived at Ollivander's wand shop. The adults chose to wait outside, letting the girls go in by themselves to select their wands. It was a tradition for young witches and wizards to choose their first wand alone, making the experience more memorable. For Susan, Hannah, and Daphne, going in together made the occasion even more significant, reinforcing the strong bond they shared. As they waited outside the wand shop, Harry decided to open up about the intense meeting he had just had with his parents. Sirius listened carefully, his expression serious. Sirius responded with a nod. Well, good, that eventual meeting is behind you now, and that's for the best, he said, his voice firm. It was wise to give them a chance to prove themselves. Let them sort their thoughts out on their own. If this makes them reconsider their complete trust in Dumbledore, even better. The decision to leave you in the Muggle world never made sense to me. Now that I have Aries, I can't imagine what they were thinking to abandon you like that. I could never do that to my child. Harry nodded, clearly ready to steer the conversation away from the more somber topics of his past. Let's change the subject. When is grandfather planning to pass the Black Lordship to you? It feels like it's about time. Very soon, Sirius answered, a serious look on his face. Grandfather is wrapping up some final matters, severing ties and recalling loans from families linked to the darker elements of our world. He knows I want nothing to do with those associated with Death Eaters, so he's making sure all of that is settled before he steps down. Once he's done, I'll take the test for the lordship. If I pass, I'll become the next Lord Black. Grandpa Arcturus thinks I'm ready. That's awesome, Sirius. Congratulations. Harry said, smiling. You'll be a great Lord Black, just like grandfather. Sirius nodded, I hope so. I also want people to fear crossing against me. Harry reassured him, you will. By the way, how's Nymphadora doing these days? Sirius laughed softly. I'm still surprised she lets you use her first name. Harry grinned back. Well, I owe that to last year's Dada professor. His lack of skill pushed her to seek my help, and she agreed to let me call her Nymphadora in exchange for my tutoring. She definitely got the better end of the deal there, Sirius remarked with a chuckle. She ended up getting the best grade in Dada in her year, thanks to you. No one else even came close to an outstanding, the second best was an exceeded expectations grade. You know, you should really consider becoming a Dada professor one day. You have a knack for it. Harry shook his head slightly. I haven't really thought about that seriously. Maybe someday. So, is she still planning to join the Aurors? Yes, she's very set on it, Sirius said with a nod. Applications for the Auror training are down this year, so she'll likely get in even if she's a bit clumsy. I've been working on that with her, Harry replied. She's gotten better, but she's still naturally a bit clumsy. Just make sure Amelia gets her training with Moody. He'll get her into shape quickly. That's exactly the plan, Sirius agreed. Andromeda was only okay with Tonks pursuing a career as an Auror if she was trained under someone as capable as Moody. With his guidance and strict oversight, she'll be in the best hands. Their conversation meandered through various topics as they continued to wait outside the wand shop. After a while, Susan, Hannah, and Daphne finally emerged, their faces lit up with excitement as they showed off their new wands, eager to test them out. The day ended on a high note, with everyone heading back to their homes happy to have finished the shopping in one day. Harry also returned to Black Castle, feeling relaxed and ready for more training. The next day, Susan was really excited to start learning how to use her new wand. Unfortunately, Sirius and Amelia were busy with their jobs and weren't home. Amelia had even taken little Aries with her to the ministry, where she worked. Everyone there was too respectful to comment on it. Left without her guardians, Susan turned to Creaker for help to take her to Harry. She knew she couldn't start practicing magic spells by herself, and Creaker, following Amelia's strict instructions, wouldn't let her experiment on her own. Finding Harry in the library at the Black Castle, Susan approached him with her request to learn magic. Harry was busy but set aside his work to listen to her. You know, you can't use magic outside of Hogwarts without risking serious trouble, Harry informed her. The Ministry of Magic keeps an eye on that, and you could even be expelled from school if they catch you. Disappointment washed over Susan's face as she absorbed Harry's words. Seeing her sad expression, Harry couldn't help but laugh gently before adding, but actually, that rule only applies once you start at Hogwarts. Until then, you're not being watched by the Ministry. Susan's eyes sparkled with sudden excitement. Really? Why didn't anyone tell me sooner? I could have gotten my wand much earlier after my birthday and started practicing weeks ago. What about the agreement with your friends then? Harry asked, amused by her sudden change of plans. We could have just gone shopping together instead, Susan mused. Laughing, Harry encouraged her, well, no point in worrying about what could have been. Let's use the time we have now. Harry began by teaching Susan the Lumos spell, a basic yet essential spell that lights the tip of the wand. Susan managed to master it after just a few tries, impressing Harry with her quick learning. Satisfied with her progress, he left her to practice the spell under Creaker's watchful eye while he returned to his reading. Considering it sufficient for the day, Harry thought about possibly teaching her more the next day if she was interested. If Susan was content with just Lumos, that would be fine too, it would give him more time to focus on his own studies. However, the next day, Susan returned, eager to learn more. She wanted to learn spells that could impress Sirius and Amelia. Seeing her enthusiasm, Harry decided to teach her a couple of more challenging beginner spells. First, he introduced her to a stinging hexa spell that shoots small, harmless bursts to help her practice her aiming skills. Next, he taught her a prank spell that could change the color of people's hair. This spell was not only fun but also good for sharpening her concentration and creativity. Harry chose these spells intentionally to lay a strong foundation for Susan, making it easier for her to pick up more complex spells in the future. Their training sessions were relaxed and brief, just a few minutes here and there, but they were productive. Susan was quickly improving, and whenever Sirius found some free time after work, he joined in to assist with her training. Together, they made sure Susan was well prepared and confident in her magical abilities as she approached her start at Hogwarts. The weeks passed quickly, and soon it was time for everyone to head back to Hogwarts. Harry felt more prepared than ever for the potentially dangerous year ahead. His fear of Voldemort had significantly diminished and Harry was confident enough to face any unexpected situations. The rigorous training and extensive magical studies had greatly enhanced his physical and magical abilities, giving him a new confidence. Although Harry didn't know the full extent of Voldemort's power, he felt confident enough to face him, especially since Voldemort was weakened and attached to Quirrell's head. Harry doubted that Voldemort, in such a state, could harness much power. Over the past year, Harry had made incredible progress in his magical training. He had reached a point where he could stand toe-to-toe with Sirius during their duels. Although Sirius still came out on top after intense and prolonged battles due to his more extensive combat experience, Harry's magical abilities had nearly caught up to his. Sirius was amazed by Harry's rapid development, playfully remarking that Harry was turning into a formidable wizard, almost like a monster in his strength and skills. With this newfound power and confidence, Harry was genuinely excited for the school year. He was prepared for what might be his first real encounter with Voldemort. Chapter 116, Hogwarts Express. The morning of September 1st was full of activity at the Bones Manor, as everyone got ready for the trip to King's Cross Station. Sirius, Amelia, and Susan were bustling around, grabbing last-minute items and double-checking Susan's trunk. Harry, who had arrived earlier for breakfast, was already packed and ready. He could have traveled to the station by himself, but he didn't want to miss the chance to accompany his younger sister, Susan, on her first journey to Hogwarts. "Come on, Susan, we're going to be late if you don't hurry," Amelia called out, trying to speed things along. "I'm all set, let's get going," Susan responded, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and nerves about starting her first year at Hogwarts. Amelia couldn't help but smile at Susan's eagerness, though she felt a sense of relief too. Ever since Harry and Sirius had introduced Susan to some basic spells and pranks, she had turned the house into her playground, often using Amelia as her unsuspecting target. The mischief had reached a point where Amelia had half-seriously considered going to the ministry to put the trace on Susan early just to get some peace. Fortunately, a stern warning had been enough to curb the pranks, at least towards Amelia, and things had settled down. With everyone finally ready, the group used apparition to travel directly to King's Cross Station. Once they arrived, Sirius took care of the luggage, allowing Susan to soak in all the excitement and chaos of the bustling station. They made their way to the magical entrance of Platform 9 3/4, where the Hogwarts Express awaited. After a flurry of hugs and last-minute reminders, Harry quickly said his goodbyes. He was eager to find his own friends and didn't stick around to watch any emotional departures. Leaving Susan with Sirius and Amelia for their farewells, Harry headed off to find his compartment. The platform was unusually crowded that day, and Harry quickly figured out why. The center of attention was Charles Potter, the boy who lived. Unlike Harry from the books, this boy who lived was a true celebrity, often seen in public and thus had amassed a large following. It was no surprise that a throng of fans had gathered to give him a grand send-off to Hogwarts. Charles, dressed in his new Hogwarts robes, looked like a younger, slightly chubbier version of Harry, except for the hair. While Harry's hair was neatly combed, Charles sported the iconic messy Potter hair that Harry had managed to tame. These differences were enough to tell them apart, and Harry was glad for it. It meant no one would confuse him with his brother. The Potter family stood near a train compartment, surrounded by people making a fuss over Charles. Harry had no desire to get close. Their last encounter a month ago was still fresh in his mind, and he wasn't keen on another confrontation, especially not on a platform swarming with Charles's fans who might not take kindly to him. With a shake of his head, Harry steered clear of the crowd and hurried off to find the compartment where his friends were waiting. He wanted nothing more than to avoid any drama and start the school year on a peaceful note. Harry quickly found himself in a compartment with Reggie, Arabella, Elvinia, and Roger, while their other friends were just next door. "Excited for the year, Harry?" Arabella asked, her voice curious as Harry slid the compartment door closed behind him. "Same as always. But I have a feeling this year might be more eventful than usual," Harry responded, finding a spot to sit among his friends. Roger made a face, looking slightly worried. "Really? Do you think it'll be like our first year? I didn't like always being scared to walk through the corridors." "Don't worry too much," Harry reassured him, trying to ease his friend's concern. "It's just a hunch. Besides, if anything really serious happens, we've got the professors. They'll take care of it." Elvinia, noticing the tension in the air, decided to change the subject. "Let's talk about something more cheerful. What electives did everyone pick?" Harry was in a compartment with his studious friends. All four of them had chosen to study care of magical creatures, arithmancy, and ancient runes. The maximum number of electives a third year could take was 3. Any more than that, and their schedules would clash. Harry found it peculiar that in the books, a young teenager like Hermione Granger was allowed to use a time turner to manage her schedule. In his world, such powerful artifacts were tightly regulated by the Department of Mysteries, and rightly so. The idea of entrusting something so dangerous to a child seemed irresponsible. Despite his efforts, Harry had never managed to get his hands on one. As the conversation turned to his own elective choices, Harry's peers were intrigued. "I picked care of magical creatures and divination," Harry announced, surprising his friends a bit. "Divination, really? That doesn't seem like your kind of subject," Reggie commented, a bit amused. Harry laughed. "Well, I've already earned owls in arithmancy and Muggle studies, and I've studied ancient runes well ahead on my own. I had to pick 2 electives, so why not divination? I've heard it is fun. The professor enjoys predicting the doom of a student in every class." Harry truly chose divination just for the enjoyment of it. While he could have opted for ancient runes, the idea of experiencing Professor Trelawney's dramatic classes, as depicted in the books, intrigued him. He imagined the humor in fabricating elaborate prophecies and observing his classmates' reactions, perhaps even witnessing a few tears. He was curious to see if the class would be as amusing as he expected. Arabella raised an eyebrow. "Predicting doom? That sounds more alarming than entertaining. And isn't divination sort of pointless without the sight? If it's not as enjoyable as I hope, I'll switch out," Harry replied with a shrug. "We have a month to change our minds about electives. Maybe in that time, I'll discover I have a talent for foreseeing the future." His friends groaned at his light-hearted approach, but they couldn't help but smile. Their talk then meandered away from academics to the latest Hogwarts rumors, lightening the mood in the compartment. The Hogwarts Express had left the station, beginning the long ride to the school. Arabella, looking a bit concerned, shared some news with the group. "I've heard that the Malfoy era is starting at Hogwarts this year. I hope Warrington doesn't get any new ideas. The last 2 years have been so peaceful without his mischief." Reggie, always the optimist, reassured her, "No need to worry. If he starts causing trouble, the pranksters will take care of him. They always do." Harry nodded, adding his own assurance. "Absolutely, and I've picked up a few tricks from Sirius recently. If he bothers either of you, just let me know. I'll make sure he regrets it so much, he won't want to leave his dorm." While they were deep in conversation, the compartment door swung open suddenly, cutting off their chat. The group glanced toward the door, visibly annoyed by the interruption. In the doorway stood a girl with bushy hair looking quite confident, alongside a timid boy who seemed like he was trying to escape but was held back by the bushy-haired girl. Harry quickly recognized the boy as Neville, which meant the girl with him was probably Hermione Granger. Harry didn't immediately recognize her because she looked different from Emma Watson, the actress who portrayed her in the movies. Instead, she looked like any other British girl with bushy hair. Even though Harry was somewhat familiar with Hermione's character from the stories, her abrupt and impolite entrance annoyed him, diminishing his initial impression of her. Arabella, clearly annoyed, snapped at the newcomers, "Hey! Ever heard of knocking?" Hermione started to explain, looking a bit flustered, "I'm sorry. My friend lost his pet toad. I was just trying to help him find it." Roger cut her off, his voice firm, "No toads here. Remember to knock next time before you barge in. Now, could you please close the door on your way out?" With the door shut and the first years gone, silence fell over the compartment. Harry stood up, deciding to take action. "I know the boy. I'll go out and help him. I'll be back in a minute," he announced to his friends, then he stepped out of the compartment. Chapter 117, Oxio Trevor. After gently closing the door, Harry spotted Neville nearby and approached him. "Hey Neville, sorry about that. We were caught up in a fun chat, and your sudden entrance threw us off a bit," Harry explained. Neville, looking a bit flustered, replied, "It's okay, Harry. I tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen." Hermione looked embarrassed. "I just wanted to help." Harry offered some advice to Hermione, keeping his tone gentle yet firm. "It's good that you want to help, but it's also important to respect others' privacy. I guess you might be new to the wizarding world, being Muggle-born, so you're still learning our ways. Let me give you a tip. Think of Hogwarts as an aristocratic school in the Muggle world, filled with children from influential families. You should act here as you would in such a school, always with good manners and careful not to offend anyone. Offending the wrong person at Hogwarts can have serious consequences." Hermione listened closely to what Harry was saying, nodding her head to show she understood, yet her face showed she was a bit confused. "But the books I've read about Hogwarts didn't mention anything like that, and Professor McGonagall told us Hogwarts is the safest place on Earth," she said. Harry gave a small smile. "Books don't tell you everything. What I'm sharing with you are some life lessons that will help you get along better in this world. It's important to be polite and respectful, especially when you're the new one around. You wouldn't want to start off on the wrong foot with the older students, would you?" he explained gently. "My name's Hermione. Hermione Granger," she introduced herself more formally. "Nice to meet you, Ms. Granger." "I'm Hadrian Potter," Harry introduced himself in return. Hermione's eyes widened slightly. "Potter? As in Charles Potter?" "Yes, I'm his older brother." "But, well, we're not exactly close," Harry said, his tone indicating he didn't wish to dive deeper into personal matters. "You might want to ask Neville about it sometime. I prefer not to discuss my family issues." Hermione seemed eager to ask more, but a firm look from Harry made it clear that the conversation was over. She bit back her questions, nodding slowly in understanding. Harry turned back to Neville, changing the subject to something more urgent. "You mentioned a toad, Neville." "Yes, my toad Trevor is missing. My great-uncle Algy gave him to me, and I'm sure he's somewhere on this train," Neville explained, looking worried. "Do you have a picture of Trevor? I can use a spell to call him to us, but I need to know what he looks like," Harry said thoughtfully. Neville shook his head, indicating he didn't have a picture. Harry pondered for a moment, then had an idea. "There's another way to do this. You can try the spell yourself, Neville." "But I'm not very good at magic," Neville admitted, looking downcast. "Don't worry, I'll help you," Harry reassured him. "Just say the words Oxio Trevor while picturing Trevor coming towards you. I'll handle the rest." Hermione, who had been listening intently, looked puzzled. "Can magic really be used like this? I haven't read about anything like this in any of the books." Harry smiled at her curiosity. "Not everyone can perform magic this way, but fortunately, I can. It is a little complicated and isn't something typically found in basic magic books, but you might find more advanced texts on it in the Hogwarts library. Now, Neville, are you ready to try?" Neville nodded, and Harry encouraged him to focus. "Remember what I said, visualize Trevor coming towards you and say the spell with confidence." Neville carefully took out his wand, and Harry gently held his hands to guide him. Harry planned to help Neville by using a technique called assisted magic. In this method, Harry would manage the flow of magic into Neville's wand and perform the wand movements himself, while Neville focused on the incantation and visualization. Harry was trying this approach for the first time with someone else, but he felt sure it would work. Neville was using a new wand, unlike using his father's wand like in the books. Given Neville's inherent magical ability, Harry believed he could successfully cast the spell. On their first attempt, Neville whispered, "Accio Trevor," but nothing happened. Seeing Neville's hesitance, Harry knew he needed to boost his confidence. "Close your eyes, Neville, and clear your mind. Take your time," Harry instructed, waiting patiently for Neville to relax. Once he sensed Neville's calmness, Harry continued, "Now, picture Trevor in your mind. Remember how he looks, the sounds he makes, and the way he hops around in the garden. Can you see him? Good. Now, imagine Trevor hopping towards you, think about how happy you are to see him. Hold on to that image, and when you're ready, call him with confidence. Just focus on Trevor coming to you and nothing else." Encouraged, Neville focused deeply and then called out with more certainty, "Accio Trevor." As Neville spoke the spell, Harry carefully adjusted the magical energy flowing through Neville's wand, making sure it was just right for the spell to work. At first, nothing seemed to happen after Neville called out the spell. But then, out of nowhere, loud croaking filled the air, and a toad zoomed toward them from down the corridor. Harry quickly reached out and caught the toad in one smooth motion. Neville looked on in disbelief, amazed that he had actually managed to cast the spell correctly. "Great job, Neville! You managed to cast a spell that many fourth-year students struggle with, and you did it on just your second try. You've got a real knack for magic," Harry praised him, handing Trevor back to Neville. Neville, still overwhelmed, responded, "I don't think I really did anything. It felt like it was all your magic." Harry smiled and shook his head, "You need to give yourself more credit, Neville. The visualization and desire you put into the spell, that's the heart of magic. You'll learn more about this in your classes. Believe in yourself, you have great potential. Once you get better at controlling your magic, try casting Accio on your own. I'm sure you'll be successful." "Thanks, Harry," Neville said, a small smile beginning to form as he held Trevor securely. Hermione, who had been quietly observing, chimed in with encouragement, "That was really impressive, Neville. Now that Trevor is safe, we should head back to our compartment." As they were getting ready to leave, Harry stopped them. He had been thinking about Neville's potential Hogwarts house and wondered if he could influence a better fit for him. Harry believed that Neville might do better in Hufflepuff than in Gryffindor. "Which house do you hope to be in, Neville?" Harry asked. "Can we choose our house?" Neville asked, looking puzzled. "Well, not exactly, but it does matter where you think you belong," Harry explained. "I'd like to be in Gryffindor. My parents went there, and my grandmother likes Gryffindor too," Neville replied, thinking of his family's history with the house. "Are you sure about that?" Harry pressed gently. "Susan will probably be in Hufflepuff. You might be happier there, surrounded by friends." "But Gryffindor is better," Hermione interjected. "Professor Dumbledore was in Gryffindor, after all." Harry turned to Hermione and questioned, "So? Why does that matter?" "Headmaster Dumbledore is the most powerful wizard alive," Hermione said as if that settled the matter. Harry countered, "Why should that influence your house choice? Hogwarts houses are meant to match you with like-minded peers. Many famous wizards and witches came from different houses. Think about the school's founders Helga Hufflepuff and Rowena Ravenclaw. Are their houses any less important? I'd say the Hogwarts founders were more powerful than Professor Dumbledore. So, following your logic, maybe those are the houses you should be aiming for. Also, consider Merlin, he was sorted into Slytherin. Does that make Slytherin the greatest?" Hermione looked puzzled and muttered, "But isn't Slytherin the evil house?" Harry countered, "Merlin, one of the most respected wizards, was from Slytherin. Many important wizards come from there. So, another piece of advice: don't go around labeling Slytherins as evil. It won't end well for you." Hermione mentioned, "But you know who was from Slytherin." Harry sighed, arguing this point seems fruitless. "It's good you don't favor Slytherin, as a Muggle-born, you might find it tough there." Turning back to Neville, Harry added, "Hufflepuff is just an option, Neville. You should go where you feel you belong. Any house will be lucky to have you. And Miss Granger, I hope you end up in Ravenclaw. In other houses, you will find it difficult to make any friends." Hermione was not happy with Harry's final comment, but Harry didn't linger on it. He simply said goodbye to Neville and headed back to his own compartment. Harry had shared quite a bit of advice with them. If they took it to heart, their time at school would likely be much smoother. He believed Neville could thrive in any house, but Hufflepuff would provide the nurturing environment he needed to really come into his own. In the other houses, he might find it harder to find that kind of support. For Hermione, Ravenclaw seemed like the best fit. There, she was less likely to face the kind of challenges that could make her feel isolated. It would also save her from being bullied into hiding in a bathroom during Halloween. Harry wasn't planning on becoming very close to Hermione or taking on the role of her guide in the wizarding world. He simply didn't have the time or inclination to do so. So this might be the only time he was free to give her any advice. Back in the compartment, Harry caught up with his friends about his encounter with Neville. He explained the long-standing close relationship between the Potter and Longbottom families. His friends understood the situation well. They agreed that Hermione had been the one who acted rudely, not Neville, so they didn't hold any hard feelings against him. Chapter 118, From Hogwarts Express to Voldemort. The journey on the Hogwarts Express after Harry's chat with Hermione and Neville was quite calm. He and his friends spent the time chatting about what they did over the summer and what they expected from the upcoming school year. The conversation quickly turned to Quidditch when Angelina, full of energy and excitement, piped up. "I practiced a lot over the summer, got quicker, and learned loads of new tricks. I'm pretty sure those Slytherin chasers have no chance against me this year. I can almost guarantee that the Quidditch Cup will be ours." Roger looked towards Harry, enthusiasm in his eyes. "This year the cup is all ours, right, Harry? The Ravenclaw team is counting on you." Harry gave a noncommittal shrug. "I'm not sure I'll even play. Quidditch is great, but it's really cutting into my study time." Roger seemed a bit annoyed. "Come on, Harry. You're always studying. You already know everything they teach us. Why not take a break and help Ravenclaw clinch the cup?" Reggie, who was always intrigued by Harry's academic prowess, chimed in. "Seriously, Harry. With the amount you study, you could probably sit for the owls right now." Harry just smiled. "Perhaps, but I'll sit for them with everyone else when the time comes." Roger persisted. "Could you at least think about playing? Maybe just like last year." Harry considered it for a moment. "All right, I'll think about it, but only if I can play as the regular seeker, under the same conditions as last year. Only as the regular seeker can I guarantee our best shot at winning the cup. That's a tough condition, but I'll talk to the captain and see what I can do. It might be hard to convince them to let you play without joining the regular practices. But the dream of winning the cup might just sway them," Roger responded, hopeful yet unsure. Angelina couldn't help but laugh. "I kind of hope he doesn't convince them. If Harry plays, he might finish the games too quickly, and I won't get to show off my new moves." Their conversation was interrupted as more friends squeezed into the already crowded compartment, shifting the conversation to another competitive topic. Arabella changed the subject. "Let's drop Quidditch for a bit. What about the House Cup? You Ravenclaws really stole it last minute last year." Elvinia, always keen on competition, chimed in with a spark in her eyes. "This year, it's definitely going to be Slytherins. Professor Snape has finally warned the bullies in our house to stop losing points needlessly. If they actually listen, we might just win." Harry, however, didn't share the same enthusiasm. "I don't really get why everyone makes such a big fuss about the House Cup. It's just a trophy at the end of the year." Cedric added his perspective. "It's more than just a trophy for us in Hufflepuff. Winning the cup 2 years ago really lifted everyone's spirits. It meant a lot." Harry remained skeptical, but the point system isn't exactly fair. Now that Snape is really after the cup, he could just dock points from other houses whenever he wants. There's nothing really stopping him. Reggie countered. "Maybe, but that hasn't worked out for him the last 2 years, and I doubt it will this time either." Harry chose not to continue the debate. He thought to himself that this might be the year for Gryffindor to unexpectedly come out on top. If things went according to the canon, Dumbledore might just end up awarding a hefty number of last-minute points to Gryffindor, as a way to bolster his favored chosen one and his house. As the Hogwarts Express neared its destination, Harry made one last round to check on Susan and her group of friends. He found them in high spirits, laughing and chatting away, which eased Harry's concerns. It seemed Susan was off to a positive start at Hogwarts, surrounded by friends. However, Harry's hopes of encountering his brother Charles on the train did not materialize. After their recent public dispute at the bank, Harry had thought that his parents might finally explain the truth about him to Charles, possibly prompting his younger brother to seek him out. Unfortunately, like many of his previous expectations regarding his family, this one also led to disappointment. From snippets of conversation and rumors swirling around the train, Harry learned that Charles had spent the entire journey in his compartment with his best friend, Ronald Weasley. The two apparently enjoyed a variety of snacks brought by fans and the trolley lady. There was also a minor scuffle mentioned between Charles and Draco Malfoy, but it seemed like a trivial matter that might become a common occurrence, so Harry didn't dwell on it. As the evening sky turned dark, the Hogwarts Express finally pulled into Hogsmeade Station. The students quickly disembarked, their voices filled with excitement and anticipation for the new school term. Harry, along with his friends, joined the crowd moving toward the horseless carriages that would transport them to the castle of Hogwarts, ready to start another year. On the carriage ride to Hogwarts, Harry was preoccupied with thoughts of Voldemort, whom he was going to meet in a few minutes if things were happening according to the canon. Voldemort should now be residing in the back of Professor Quirrell's head. Harry wished he could end Voldemort, who was responsible for his grandparents' deaths, this year itself, but he knew he did not have that ability yet. Dealing with wraiths, the form Voldemort was currently in, came under dark magic, and Harry had yet to start learning any dark magic. His grandfather, Arcturus, had advised him to wait until he was 17 to start such studies because diving into these dark arts too early could harm his developing magical core and potentially corrupt his mind. As the carriages pulled up to the castle and Harry entered the Great Hall, he immediately felt an unsettling probe against his mental shields. He was almost certain it was Voldemort attempting to infiltrate his thoughts to gather information about his brother, Charles. While this invasion ignited a flare of anger in Harry, he managed to keep his composure. Rather than directly confront Professor Quirrell, where he suspected Voldemort was hiding, Harry discreetly scanned the room. He needed to behave as if the mental intrusion merely unsettled him without showing that he knew exactly where it was coming from. Harry's gaze paused briefly on Snape, who looked back at him with a confused sneer. This was needed for the act because Snape was a well-known Legilimens. Harry was careful not to dwell too long on Quirrell, to avoid revealing any suspicion. The general perception was that Quirrell was a weak and incapable wizard, unlikely to know anything as advanced as Legilimency. Focusing too much on him might suggest to others that Harry suspected something unusual, which he wanted to avoid at all costs. Sitting down at the Ravenclaw table, his friend Reggie noticed his mood. "What happened, Harry? Why is your expression a little twisted?" "Nothing. Forget it." "Just thought of something bad," Harry dismissed, trying to shift his focus to the lighter banter around him. Once he felt more at ease among his fellow Ravenclaws, engaging in light conversation, Harry cautiously turned his gaze towards the staff table. His eyes finally rested on the defense against the dark arts teacher, Quirinus Quirrell, who wore a distinctive purple turban and exhibited a slight twitch and shiver. To anyone else, Quirrell might appear merely odd, but Harry knew better. Hidden beneath that turban was the Dark Lord Voldemort, a secret that few could imagine. Harry had a feeling that Dumbledore knew all about Quirrell's little secret. Whether it was Dumbledore's extensive experience with dark wizards or the Hogwarts protective spells alerting him to any darkness, Dumbledore must be aware of the Dark Lord's presence in the castle. Yet, just like in the canon, Dumbledore seemed to do nothing about it. Harry thought this might be because Dumbledore saw no real threat from Voldemort, who was significantly weakened, and Quirrell, who seemed harmless enough as a professor. It was also likely that Dumbledore was using this opportunity to see if his theories about the power he knows not mentioned in the prophecy would hold true. As Harry looked at the new professor, he half expected Quirrell to try and probe his thoughts again with Legilimency. But Quirrell didn't show any interest in him this time, which made Harry think that Voldemort might be trying to discreetly use Legilimency from behind the turban, and Quirrell was none the wiser. Voldemort probably wanted to know more about Charles, but, knowing that Harry had strong mental defenses, he might not risk another direct attempt. While Harry was considering these thoughts, the atmosphere in the Great Hall changed. The doors opened, and Professor McGonagall walked in, leading the first-year students. Chapter 119, Fragmented Mind. As the first-year students walked into the Great Hall, the buzz among the older students grew louder. The boy who lived, Charles Potter, was easy to spot with his glasses and green eyes, looking just like the pictures in the children's books about the boy who lived and articles in the Daily Prophet. Everyone recognized him immediately. Some students glanced over at Harry to see his reaction to his brother's entrance, but Harry didn't seem to be bothered or interested. So they turned their attention back to the more famous Potter. Charles seemed completely at ease in the group, almost enjoying the waves of attention washing over him, unlike his nervous and overwhelmed counterpart in the canon. Charles walked with confidence, unfazed by the stares and whispers. Right by Charles's side was Ronald Weasley. Ron, with his red hair and freckles, stood close to Charles, almost protective. It was clear he was making sure he maintained his place right next to Charles, warding off anyone who might try to get too close. It seemed Ron was quite possessive of his role as Charles's best friend. Not far behind, Harry found his sister Susan engaging enthusiastically with her New Year mates. She was animatedly sharing what she knew about Hogwarts, likely details she'd learned from Harry's letters. It was obvious from the captivated faces around her that she enjoyed being in the role of the informant, explaining the enchanted ceiling and house tables to the awestruck first years. With all the first years finally gathered in front of the hall, the anticipation built up to the moment the Sorting Hat began its traditional song, signaling the start of the sorting ceremony. As the Sorting Hat began its song, capturing the attention of every student in the Great Hall, Harry remained on high alert. He wasn't focused on the lyrics of the song but was intently watching Quirrell. Harry knew from his experience that Legilimens was most vulnerable when they themselves were attempting to invade another's thoughts. This was because their own mental defenses were temporarily weakened at that time. Harry was certain that Voldemort, like he had done with him, would not miss the chance to probe the memories of Charles. This presented Harry with a unique opportunity to sneak into Voldemort's own mind without being noticed. The main concern for Harry was whether he could use legilimency through the physical barrier of the turban and without making direct eye contact, which was typically required for such a magical intrusion. Despite the uncertainty, Harry was determined to try. So, when Quirrell momentarily turned his back to the hall, focusing possibly on Charles, Harry sensed his chance and discreetly cast a wandless legilimency spell towards the back of Quirrell's head. Harry was surprised at how easily he broke through Voldemort's mental defenses. What surprised him more was that Voldemort's mind was a chaotic mess. This was unexpected for a wizard renowned as a master of occlumency. Harry thought that the mess in Voldemort's mind might be because he almost died that night or because he was now just a ghostly wraith. This ghost-like existence seemed to have really messed up his ability to think clearly. Voldemort's mind was all over the place, making Harry wonder how he was even able to give Quirrell any directions on their quest to find the Philosopher's Stone. The confusion in his mind suggested that Voldemort was struggling to access the vast knowledge and magic he had once mastered. This struggle could also be why in the canon it took Voldemort a whole year to get past the relatively straightforward challenges that protected the stone. However, the scattered state of Voldemort's mind wasn't entirely good news for Harry. This disorder made it very hard for Harry to find anything useful. All the memories were broken into bits and pieces, and if Harry wanted to understand anything useful, he'd have to slowly and carefully piece together these fragments, like putting together a puzzle without knowing what the picture was supposed to look like. This was going to be a tough and time-consuming task. Exploring Voldemort's mind was going to be tough, but Harry believed the rare and lost magical knowledge it might hold would make the efforts worthwhile. Since he didn't have much else to do during defense against the dark arts classes anyway, Harry decided that Dada classes were the perfect time to take his chances and explore Voldemort's memories. He saw it as a way to keep busy during class. After realizing he wouldn't be able to learn anything significant in the current short amount of time, Harry decided to exit Voldemort's mind. However, before he completely withdrew, he cleverly left behind a small trick, a loophole that he could use to re-enter Voldemort's mind in the future easily. Harry doubted Voldemort would notice this loophole because his mind was so disordered. The chaos inside Voldemort's head was so intense that Harry was confident the Dark Lord wouldn't be able to focus enough to detect or repair what Harry had done. Now even if Voldemort had any existing shields on his mind, Harry was confident enough to enter it easily. After leaving Voldemort's mind, Harry turned to look at Charles to see if he had any reaction. Voldemort had tried to read Charles's mind, and Harry expected that Charles, being trained by Dumbledore, would at least notice or block the attempt. However, to Harry's surprise, Charles showed no sign of noticing anything amiss. He acted as if nothing had happened. Harry knew this meant that Charles didn't know any occlumency and did not have any mental defenses in place to safeguard himself from mind readers. Harry was puzzled. He wondered if Charles simply lacked the talent in occlumency, or if Dumbledore had chosen not to teach him. Harry found this neglect risky and unwise. Harry felt that Dumbledore should at least enchant Charles's glasses to offer some protection against such attacks, but it seemed nothing had been done. While Harry was lost in thought about Charles and Dumbledore's plans, the Sorting Hat finished its song. It was now time for the sorting ceremony, and the first-year students were excited to get divided into their Hogwarts houses. Chapter 120, Sorting Ceremony. The Great Hall was alive with noise and movement as Professor McGonagall took center stage, unrolling a lengthy parchment. Excitement and a bit of anxiety hung in the air, especially among the first-year students who were about to learn their Hogwarts house. Professor McGonagall's voice rang out clearly in the bustling hall, "When I call your name, please come forward, put on the hat, and sit on the stool to be sorted." Her first call was Abbot, Hannah. Hannah walked up with hesitant steps, a mix of nervousness and anticipation evident in her movements. As she placed the sorting hat on her head, it comically slid down over her eyes, drawing a brief silence from the crowd. Then, suddenly, the hat's voice boomed out, "Hufflepuff." The tension broke like a wave, and the Hufflepuff table erupted in cheers and clapping, warmly welcoming their new housemate. Next on the list was a name Harry was eagerly waiting for. "Bones, Susan," called McGonagall. Harry watched intently as his sister walked up to the stool with a mix of nerves and excitement. Placing the hat on her head, it didn't take long before it shouted, "Hufflepuff." Susan's face lit up with a smile as she quickly moved to sit next to Hannah. Harry clapped heartily from his seat, feeling a surge of pride for his sister joining the friendly and loyal house of Hufflepuff. The sorting ceremony continued smoothly, and Harry found himself recognizing many names that were familiar from the Harry Potter books and movies. One after another, students like Terry Boot, Lavender Brown, Millicent Bulstrode, Justin Finch-Fletchley, and Seamus Finnegan were called up. Each of them walked up to the stool, placed the sorting hat on their heads, and shortly after, their new house was announced, eliciting cheers and applause from their new housemates. When Daphne Greengrass's name was called, she calmly walked up to the stool and was quickly sorted into Slytherin. Harry felt a little relieved knowing she would be all right, Arabella and Elvinia would surely look after her. Then came Hermione Granger's turn, a moment Harry had been somewhat anxious about. He had given her some advice earlier, hoping it might influence her sorting in some way. As Hermione sat under the hat, the hall fell silent for a moment. Unlike the quick decisions of many others, the hat seemed to take a little longer with Hermione. Harry could see from her expression that she was having quite a discussion with the hat. Finally, after a tense minute, the hat loudly declared Gryffindor. Harry felt a pang of disappointment. It seemed Hermione had not taken his advice. Somewhat unfortunate, since she could have had a better school life in Ravenclaw. This outcome meant Harry wouldn't be intervening in Hermione's life further. If his advice hadn't helped her now, he doubted it would in the future. He silently wished that Hermione would find good friends in Charles and Ron, hoping she would become part of their group. If not, Hogwarts could prove to be a challenging place for her. Neville Longbottom's turn was one of the lengthier ones. The sorting hat seemed to ponder deeply before finally shouting, "Gryffindor." Harry, who had secretly hoped Neville might join his sister in Hufflepuff, felt a slight disappointment wash over him. He had tried to influence Neville's placement, thinking Hufflepuff would be more supportive for him, but it seemed fate had other plans. Regardless, Harry resolved to continue supporting Neville in any way he could. As the ceremony moved forward, Draco Malfoy's name was called. The hall watched as he briskly walked up to the stool, placed the hat on his head, and almost instantly, Slytherin was announced. Harry watched the young Malfoy from across the room, contemplating the boy's future. In Harry's eyes, Draco was not truly the villain some made him out to be, he was just a boy shaped by his upbringing and his father's expectations. His actions, often seen as mischievous or misguided in the books, were those of a child trying to live up to a villainous image set by his family, yet often failing to truly be malicious. Finally, after more students were sorted, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. "Potter, Charles," Professor McGonagall announced. As Charles sat on the stool, the entire hall watched with bated breath. Almost instantly, Gryffindor was announced. There was no hesitation in the sorting hat's decision, reflecting the upbringing and influences of Charles, who was raised by Gryffindor parents and mentored by a Gryffindor headmaster. Charles sprinted towards the Gryffindor table, where he was met with loud cheers, especially from the Weasley twins who excitedly chanted, "We got Potter! We got Potter!" The ceremony seemed particularly long this year, possibly because Harry recognized many names from the books, making each sorting feel more significant. However, it could also be due to an unusually large number of first-year students. The final students, Ron Weasley and Blaise Zabinai, were quickly sorted into Gryffindor and Slytherin, respectively. With their sorting, the lengthy process finally came to an end. Professor McGonagall carefully rolled up her scroll and took away the sorting hat, marking the conclusion of the sorting ceremony. The students' attention shifted as they prepared for the next part of the evening. Professor Dumbledore stood up, his eyes twinkling as he addressed the hall. "Welcome," he began, "welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I would like to say a few words. And here they are, nitwit. Blubber. Oddment. Tweak. Thank you." He sat down amid applause and laughter, leaving some, like Harry, wondering about his eccentric nature. Harry wondered if Dumbledore was simply being his usual quirky self or if this was part of a deeper strategy to keep his adversaries off balance. As the applause died down, the tables magically filled with an array of delicious foods. The students, who had been waiting eagerly, immediately started to fill their plates, diving into the feast. The hall was quickly filled with the sounds of a joyful dinner, with conversations buzzing and laughter echoing around the room. After everyone had their fill, and the dessert plates had been cleared, Dumbledore stood once more. The hall quieted down instantly, all eyes on him. "Ahem, just a few more words now that we are all fed and watered," he continued, his voice carrying across the quiet hall. "I have a few start-of-term notices to give you. First years should note that the forest on the grounds is forbidden to all pupils. And a few of our older students would do well to remember that as well." His eyes twinkled as they briefly flicked towards the Weasley twins, who responded with sheepish grins. Professor Dumbledore continued his announcements with a slight sternness in his tone. "I have also been asked by Mr. Filch, our caretaker, to remind everyone that magic is not permitted in the corridors between classes. Additionally, Quidditch trials will be held during the second week of the term. Those interested in joining their house teams should speak with Madam Hooch." He paused for a moment before adding, "And finally, I must caution you all that the third-floor corridor on the right-hand side is strictly off-limits to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death." Upon hearing this, Harry couldn't help but be intrigued by the mention of the forbidden corridor. He wondered about the Philosopher's Stone which was stored in that corridor. Was it actually real, or merely a decoy to lure Voldemort? Harry was quite curious about the stone, pondering its potential uses if it were indeed real. Roger, a bit alarmed, turned to Harry and whispered, "He's not serious, is he?" Harry nodded slowly, "Must be serious. And remember, stay away from that corridor. That corridor might be the reason I felt this year was not going to be quiet like last year." Reggie, half joking, chimed in, "Okay, we'll steer clear of there. Harry, maybe you really do have a knack for seeing the future. Good luck in your divination class." As Dumbledore concluded his speech, the traditional Hogwarts song filled the hall, signaling the end of the feast. It was time for the students to head back to their dormitories. Harry cast one last look at his brother Charles and then at Quirrell before he joined his Ravenclaw dorm mates to make their way to the Ravenclaw Tower. Chapter 121, First Day Clashes. The new school year at Hogwarts kicked off with its usual lively atmosphere, but for Harry, it was just the start of another busy day. He woke up early and made his way to the Forbidden Forest for his routine morning jog and a bit of sword training. The forest greeted him with its customary silence, unchanged and as tranquil as he had left it before the holidays, providing a brief period of peace before his day fully began. He planned to return later in the evening to check on a few more things in the forest. After wrapping up his morning exercises and enjoying a quick breakfast, Harry's day continued with his regular class schedule. Unfortunately, he was slightly disappointed to find out that there was no defense against the dark arts, class with Professor Quirrell today. He was particularly looking forward to this class to delve further into Voldemort's memories, which he had started exploring the night before. Harry was keen to tackle the challenging task of navigating through Voldemort's fragmented and chaotic mind, hoping to uncover some valuable knowledge and information hidden within. Sadly, he would have to wait another day to resume this intriguing but daunting exploration. The day flew by, filled with the usual rhythm of classes, lectures, and note-taking. However, the day was far from dull, especially with the buzz surrounding the school's new celebrity, Charles Potter. Throughout the day, there was constant chatter about Charles and his amusing first-day mishaps. Stories circulated about how he and his friend Ron Weasley overslept, causing them to be late for their first class. Their tardiness meant there was no one in the corridors to guide them, resulting in them getting lost. Eventually, the Gryffindor ghost had to lead them to their classroom. When they finally made their appearance in Professor McGonagall's class, their entrance was marked by a mix of antics that quickly became the talk of the school. Fans of Charles defended him, while others found humor in the situation, sharing laughs throughout the corridors. Harry found himself slightly embarrassed as his friends teased him about his brother's blunders. However, he quickly reminded himself that he and Charles were not close, they were practically strangers. This detachment allowed Harry to brush off most of the gossip, although he couldn't help but be amused by some of the stories. He was particularly looking forward to seeing how Charles would handle his first potions class, anticipating it would be an entertaining spectacle and likely the highlight of his week. As the day turned into evening, Harry prepared for another trip to the Forbidden Forest. He was keen on assessing the current state of the forest. Harry wondered if the Centaurs had managed to keep the angry Acromantula colony in check during his absence. It was crucial for him to find out if the Centaurs had controlled the spiders or if he would need to step in to stop them from spreading their territory too close to the school grounds. This year, Harry was particularly cautious about disturbing the forest creatures too much. He knew that Voldemort would soon be prowling the forest in search of unicorn blood. Facing Voldemort and an unchecked Acromantula colony at the same time was not something Harry wanted to deal with. While he wasn't scared of the weakened Voldemort, he was wary of potential surprise attacks during his patrols for Acromantulas. Therefore, Harry decided that this year he would focus less on the Acromantulas and more on protecting the noble unicorns from Voldemort's deadly pursuits. As Harry left the castle for his evening venture into the Forbidden Forest, he unexpectedly bumped into his younger brother Charles, and his friend, Ron Weasley. The boys looked confused and frustrated, clearly lost in the sprawling corridors of Hogwarts. When Charles saw Harry, his face twisted into a scowl of anger. "You! How dare you show your face after what you did?" Charles accused him angrily. Harry was not in the mood to get into a pointless argument. He had once hoped that he could have a good relationship with Charles, that his brother might understand why Harry felt so strongly about their parents. But now, seeing Charles's reaction, Harry realized he might have expected too much from the young boy, who was still just an 11-year-old, possibly too young to understand anything. He might also have been fed lies. But Harry did not care about correcting his views. Trying to avoid a confrontation, Harry attempted to walk past them. But Charles blocked his path, standing firm. However, Charles stepped in his way, insisting, "You cannot go. I need you to apologize to Mom." Ron, puzzled by the confrontation, asked Charles, "Who is this, Charlie? He looks a bit like you." Charles responded with a hint of bitterness in his voice, "He's my older brother. He didn't grow up with us, he lived with our aunt. He's not a good person." Harry exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the moment. "Look, I'm really busy. I don't have time for this." Yet Charles was not ready to let it go. "You need to write a letter of apology to Mom. She's been really upset since you argued with her." Ron chimed in, supporting his friend, "Yeah, apologize to Aunt Lily." Harry replied firmly, "I don't owe an apology. She knows what she needs to do to make things right. I've told her how she can earn my forgiveness. Now, please, let me go." But Charles stepped in front of him again, blocking his way. "You can't go until you apologize. Mom has been crying every day because of what you said." Harry, maintaining his calm, explained, "It's not my problem if she can't handle the truth. Now, step aside, please." Charles's face hardened as he issued a threat, "If you don't apologize, I'll tell Grandpa Dumbledore and the Minister. They'll punish you." Harry dismissed the threat with a chuckle, "They can't do anything to me." Charles really thought too much of himself. He was just a mascot in the wizarding world with no real power. The most influence he could wield was to cry to his young teenage fans who adored him. These fans might criticize Harry for reprimanding their beloved Charles, but that was the extent of his impact. "Is it because you're the Potter heir? Dad said you stole it from me," Charles accused. Harry corrected him firmly, "I didn't steal anything. Grandfather chose me as the heir. You really should get your facts straight." Charles's frustration grew as he spat out more accusations, "You're lying. You hate me because you had to live with our aunt in the Muggle world and you hated it there. Why are you so upset about that? I think you had an easy life. Do you have any idea how hard my life has been in the wizarding world? I couldn't even go outside without being swarmed by fans, making it hard for me to even enjoy a day out. I had to be on guard against dark wizard attacks. And the fan mail I had to learn to write properly at a young age because Mum insisted I respond to every letter. On top of that, I had to train in magic every day with Grandpa Dumbledore, preparing for the day you-know-who returns, to protect everyone." Ron chimed in, "Yeah, those letters were exhausting, and the training and books were tough. I could not train but I watched Charles struggle." Harry couldn't help but laugh at Charles's complaints. "You think that's a tough life? You have no idea what hard really is. If we had switched places, you wouldn't be here today. You better learn the whole truth from your parents before you try to confront me again. I don't have time to waste here. Harry found the situation somewhat amusing, considering what Charles thought of as difficult. He had to remind himself of the boy's young age, but it still struck him as funny. He also noticed how Charles referred to Voldemort as you-know-who, which suggested fear, indicating that Dumbledore's training might not be adequate. Harry noted the way Charles called Dumbledore Grandpa Dumbledore, which seemed to hint that Dumbledore was grooming him to be his successor. It looked like the lack of a Horcrux in Charles's scar had brought about some changes. The boy who lived wasn't being raised as a sacrificial pawn like in the canon. As Harry turned to walk away, Charles issued a warning, "You're forcing me to attack you. I've been training for this." Both Charles and Ron then pulled out their wands, trying to stop Harry. With a casual flick of his wand, Harry quickly disarmed them, sending their wands flying across the corridor. The boys hurried to pick up their wands, but by the time they managed to grab them and look up, Harry was already gone. Fuming, Ron turned to Charles, "How can he just ignore you like that, Charlie? He used magic against us right here in the corridor. We should go tell Professor Dumbledore about this. He'll definitely be punished for what he did." Charles nodded in agreement, "Absolutely, let's go straight to Grandpa Dumbledore's office." But then, Charles looked unsure, Ron, do you actually know how to get to Grandpa's office?" Ron thought for a moment then suggested, "Let's just walk around the castle. We can ask someone on the way." With that plan, the two boys started off, leaving Harry to continue his walk towards the Forbidden Forest. Harry's mind was already leaving behind the brief confrontation with his brother and friend, focusing instead on the more pressing concerns waiting for him in the shadows of the towering trees. Chapter 122, Forest Alliances. After his encounter with his younger brother Charles, Harry was relieved to leave the castle's commotion behind and enter the serene, shadowy embrace of the Forbidden Forest. The antics of his brother didn't bother him too much. Charles was just behaving like the young kid he was, but that didn't mean Harry was ready to deal with him on any level. Rather than engage in pointless arguments, Harry chose to simply ignore him. He decided he'd only pay attention to Charles once he was mature enough to hold a meaningful conversation. Once inside the forest, Harry quickly donned what he specially labeled his Gryffindor disguise. With his disguise in place, he moved stealthily towards the area known to be inhabited by the Acromantula colony. However, only a few minutes into his walk, his path was unexpectedly blocked not by spiders, but by a group of centaurs. Some faces were familiar, like Bane and Doran, while others were new to him. Harry couldn't help but joke when he encountered the centaurs waiting for him. "All this to welcome me back? You shouldn't have. I didn't think you'd miss me that much," he said with a light laugh. He was genuinely surprised by their presence. The previous year, the centaurs had largely ignored him and his presence in the forest. "Don't think too highly of yourself, human. We're here on urgent business, not for pleasantries," Bane retorted sharply, his tone as prickly as ever. Harry remained calm and responded with a smile, "Understood, but I'm honored by this reception. Maybe this can start a new chapter in our relationship." Doran, the leader of the group, tried to smooth things over. "Bane, can you control your temper? This human is not our enemy. Please, call me Arthur." "I prefer it to human," Harry requested, hoping to really build closer relations with the centaurs. He chose the name Arthur because it resonated with the nobility and bravery of the legendary King Arthur, a figure of great importance in the wizarding world. Harry had tried to learn more about the real King Arthur and Merlin but found only myths and legends, no concrete historical texts that could tell him about the true events of that era. Doran stepped forward. "I'm Doran, the leader of this tribe. We've come to seek your help, Knight Arthur, in protecting the forest and its creatures. Firenze here will explain more about our situation." Harry shifted his attention to Firenze, the centaur who would eventually become a professor of divination at Hogwarts. Firenze greeted him with a formal tone, "Good evening, Knight. We are in need of your assistance to safeguard this forest. The stars have revealed to me that a grave danger looms over us this year. A dangerous wizard plans to hunt the unicorn herd living in our forest, and we centaurs lack the strength to protect them adequately from such a powerful foe." Harry, feigning ignorance, responded, "A dangerous wizard? Who might that be? Have you considered taking this issue to Dumbledore? And is this wizard hunting unicorns for their blood?" Though Harry knew the answers, he enjoyed playing the part of the uninformed, partly to lighten the mood and partly to practice his acting. Anticipating future situations where he might need to disguise his true knowledge, he saw these interactions as perfect opportunities to refine his skills. Doran's voice carried a hint of urgency as he spoke. The stars have revealed that a dark presence is returning, intent on using the blood of unicorns to achieve cursed immortality. We've informed Dumbledore, but he's preoccupied with safeguarding the students from this same threat. Unfortunately, he can't extend his protection to the forest. Harry raised an eyebrow. So, Voldemort is making a comeback, huh? But would he really risk using unicorn blood, knowing the curse that comes with it? Unless, of course, he has a plan to counteract that curse. Firenze nodded gravely. Indeed, he is returning. Drinking unicorn blood is a desperate act, done only to sustain life long enough to find a more permanent solution, a solution that restores full strength and grants eternal life. Harry mused aloud. So Dumbledore has the Philosopher's Stone hidden at Hogwarts, huh? I'm surprised the Flamels agreed to lend him such a powerful object. Firenze looked at Harry with a mixture of respect and curiosity. Your understanding is keen, human. The stars were correct in their prophecy. You possess the insight and ability needed to assist us in our plight. Harry expressed his concerns. I genuinely want to help protect the unicorns, but you must understand my limitations. I have classes and other responsibilities. It's not feasible for me to patrol the forest constantly. Doran nodded, understanding Harry's predicament. Knight Arthur, we appreciate your honesty. Fortunately, we don't need your assistance in patrolling the forest. The Centaurs are prepared to handle that task. We'll confront the wizard and do our utmost to safeguard the unicorns. However, we could use your expertise in a different area. Firenze elaborated on their request. According to the celestial signs, you possess notable healing abilities, and that's where we need your help. While we Centaurs will combat the dark forces, we can't guarantee that there won't be casualties. When injured unicorns are found, your skills in healing will be invaluable. The threat we face is focused on their blood, not direct conflict, so your role would not involve fighting. Harry felt relieved and capable in this role. If it's a matter of healing the wounded, then yes, I'm able to assist. Healing is something I can manage alongside my other commitments. Over the holidays, Harry had advanced significantly in his healing techniques, thanks largely to his time spent with Cordelia and Emma, who had provided him with practical experience and guidance. Harry was taken aback by the Centaurs' remarkable skills in divination. They seemed to know not just future events but also details about Harry's personal abilities, like his skill in healing magic, a fact not widely known among others. It appeared the Centaurs might even be aware of his true identity but chose to play along, possibly to maintain his goodwill. Their ability to foresee the future and understand deep secrets was impressive, especially compared to Professor Trelawney's sporadic and often vague prophecies. Harry found himself seriously considering the idea of helping Firenze join Hogwarts as a divination teacher. Such a move could greatly benefit the students, but he was aware of the delicate relationship between humans and Centaurs. Any effort to integrate Firenze into the school would have to be handled with sensitivity to avoid stirring historical tensions. With these thoughts in mind, Harry reached into his pocket and pulled out a specially crafted coin. Press the center of this coin when you need my help, he explained to Doran, handing him the coin. If I'm free, I'll come as quickly as I can. This coin, designed similarly to the ones Canon Hermione had created for the Dumbledore's army, allowed for discreet communication. Harry had originally made one for Susan to ensure he could be alerted if she ever found herself in danger. The coin he gave to Doran was an extra, meant for emergency use. Doran caught the coin and examined it briefly. Thank you for helping the forest, Knight Arthur, he said with a nod of appreciation. Before departing, Harry asked, before I leave, I wanted to check on the Acromantula colony. Have they been causing any more trouble lately? Doran responded with a reassuring tone, your efforts last year significantly weakened them. They're still recovering from those setbacks. Additionally, they seem to sense the tension in the air and have been unusually quiet this year. You shouldn't have any problems with them for now. That's excellent to hear. Harry exclaimed. I certainly didn't want to juggle both these problems at once. That's all I needed to know for today. I have other matters to attend to, but don't hesitate to use the coin if you need my help. Doran nodded in agreement. Yes, Knight Arthur. On behalf of all the unicorns, we're truly grateful for your willingness to assist us. It's no trouble at all. This wizard threatens us all, and disrupting his plans is a priority for me, Harry assured him. Farewell, everyone. And Bane, Harry added with a light tone, trying to ease the tension, Try to relax a little, will you? Bane bristled slightly at the comment. Who are you to tell me what to do, human? Don't assume that because you're helping, I'll start treating you kindly. Harry, with a half-smile, replied, I wouldn't dream of it, Bane. Good night. With his visit to the Forbidden Forest concluded, Harry turned his steps back toward Hogwarts Castle. There were pressing tasks waiting for him, especially with the new responsibility he had just accepted. Although Harry was good at healing magic for wizards, he recognized that healing unicorns would be a different challenge altogether. Unicorns were magical creatures with unique needs, and he wasn't fully prepared for that. Determined to acquire the necessary knowledge, Harry planned to visit the Room of Requirement next. He needed to find books and scrolls about magical creature healthcare, particularly those focused on unicorns. As he walked back, Harry reflected on the positive outcomes of his forest encounter. Helping the unicorns and potentially strengthening his ties with the centaurs felt rewarding. It was an unexpected benefit of Voldemort's return. In a way, he was grateful for the opportunity Voldemort had unwittingly provided, giving him a chance to build good relations with another magical community. Chapter 123, Dumbledore's Plans. While Harry was having serious conversations with the Centaur tribe, a different kind of activity was unfolding in the Hogwarts headmaster's office. Seated behind his grand desk, Dumbledore was immersed in deep thought. He had cleverly set in motion a series of events aimed at confirming his suspicions about Voldemort's continued existence. He had always known that Voldemort, or Tom as he knew him, had somehow survived, and now he needed to reveal this truth not just to himself, but also to calm the restless suspicions of his followers. To achieve this, Dumbledore had taken advantage of Professor Quirrell's known vulnerabilities and ambitions. He had subtly manipulated Quirrell, guiding the insecure man on a dangerous journey that Dumbledore hoped would lead him to Voldemort. Utilizing Snape's dark mark, Dumbledore had been able to make an educated guess about where Voldemort might be hiding. He then strategically leaked potential locations to Quirrell, wrapped in layers of rumors and half-truths. Dumbledore wasn't completely certain that Quirrell would manage to find Voldemort, but he felt it was a risk worth taking. In his heart, Dumbledore sensed that it was time for Voldemort to resurface. When Dumbledore received confirmation that Quirrell had indeed encountered Voldemort, his reaction was a mix of relief and satisfaction. He had cleverly placed tracking spells on Quirrell, which allowed him to gather all the necessary information remotely. Dumbledore learned that Voldemort was now residing within Quirrell, effectively possessing him. Although he was aware of the grim fate that awaited Quirrell, Dumbledore accepted that some sacrifices were necessary for the greater good. He felt a profound sadness for the young professor's doomed fate, but he was resolute in his belief that such sacrifices were essential to overcome great evil. Recognizing the imminent threat, Dumbledore reached out to his longtime friend, Nicholas Flamel. He explained the dire situation and the risk Voldemort posed to the Philosopher's Stone. Dumbledore assured Flamel that he would take every precaution to protect the stone. Moved by years of trust and respect, Flamel agreed to lend the stone to Dumbledore. However, Dumbledore's intentions extended beyond merely safeguarding the stone. He planned to use the Philosopher's Stone as a lure to draw Voldemort back to Britain. With this strategy in mind, he placed the stone in a specific vault at Gringotts and then deliberately leaked information about its location, ensuring that the news would eventually reach Voldemort. Originally, Dumbledore had a plan to capture Voldemort during an attempt to steal the Philosopher's Stone from the Gringotts vault. He knew it would be a temporary capture but hoped it would be enough to show everyone that Voldemort was indeed still alive. Dumbledore didn't attempt to destroy Voldemort, as he believed that effort would be futile. According to prophecy, only Charles could truly defeat him. As the plan unfolded, Dumbledore realized an adjustment was necessary. When he first encountered Quirrell that year, he saw that Voldemort was exceedingly weak, so much so that he couldn't use much of his powerful dark magic. This unexpected turn made Dumbledore rethink his strategy. Seeing how feeble Voldemort had become, Dumbledore recognized a chance for Charles, his young protégé, to face a real challenge. Although Charles had been trained by both his parents and Dumbledore, he still lacked a serious understanding of the threats they faced. He was somewhat naive and hadn't fully committed to his training sessions, still behaving like a typical young boy. Dumbledore therefore decided to shift his plan to include a direct confrontation between Charles and Voldemort. This encounter would take place in a controlled setting within Hogwarts, where he could keep a close eye on things and step in if things got out of hand. If Charles managed to defeat Voldemort during their encounter, possibly by some lucky chance with the power the Dark Lord knows not mentioned in the prophecy, it would be the perfect result for everyone involved. If things didn't go as planned, Dumbledore was ready to intervene and rescue Charles. This setup wasn't just about the confrontation, it was also a test to uncover more about the mysterious power mentioned in the prophecy. Additionally, Dumbledore needed to make sure Voldemort was aware that the stone was hidden within Hogwarts. This part of the plan was straightforward to implement. Dumbledore's updated strategy consisted of several carefully planned actions. He intended to subtly inform Charles about the significance of the Philosopher's Stone and invoke Charles's innate Gryffindor courage to protect the stone and the school from Voldemort. This challenge would not only test Charles's mettle but also encourage his personal growth. To safeguard the stone and set the stage for the final showdown between Charles and Voldemort, Dumbledore had equipped the third-floor corridor with various obstacles. While these obstacles were designed to be challenging, they were designed keeping Charles in mind. Obstacles Charles could cross with some help from friends. Those obstacles would never stop someone like Voldemort. The ultimate safeguard of the stone was the Mirror of East, which Dumbledore was confident Voldemort could not manipulate to obtain the stone. Everything had gone according to plan so far. Voldemort was now inside Hogwarts, and all Dumbledore needed to do was delay him until the right moment for Charles to step in. As Dumbledore thought through the details of his plan, an alert caught his attention. He glanced at his magical instruments, which showed him that Charles and Ron were on their way to his office. Dumbledore prepared himself to greet the duo, intrigued by what could have brought them to visit him so soon. Considering it was only the first day of the new school term, it seemed the young boy was already finding himself in some kind of trouble. This reminded Dumbledore of Charles's father, James, and his group called the Marauders, who were known for their mischievous exploits during their own school days. Despite the dark times that loomed outside the school walls during those years, their group managed to bring some lightheartedness and joy to Hogwarts. Chapter 124, Charles and Dumbledore. The door to the headmaster's office burst open, and Charles, followed closely by Ron, hurried into the room. "Good evening, Charlie," Dumbledore greeted them with a warm smile. "What brings you to the headmaster's office at this hour? And how on earth did you manage to find your way inside my office?" Charles, catching his breath, replied, "I missed you, Grandpa Dumbledore. Finding your office was quite an adventure. We got lost and had to ask the prefects for directions. The prefect left us at the gargoyle but didn't know the password." "And how did you manage to get in?" asked Dumbledore, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. Charles couldn't help but puff up a little with pride as he responded, "We guessed it. Dad once told me that you like to use candy names for passwords. So, Ron and I yelled out every candy name we knew until one finally worked." Dumbledore laughed heartily at this. "Well done, indeed. It appears I might need to rethink my password strategy. Here, take some lemon drops as a prize for your ingenuity." Charles's face lit up with joy as he and Ron each took a lemon drop. Dumbledore also picked one for himself, relishing the sweet moment of connection with the young students. Dumbledore, sensing there was more to the visit, asked, "So, Charlie, why have you come to visit me this evening? I suspect there's more on your mind than just missing me. Has someone bullied you?" Charles looked a bit uncomfortable as he replied, "You always see right through me, Grandpa. It's Harry, he's been really mean to Mum and now he's done the same to me. He made Mum cry and he won't say sorry. He even used magic against us in the corridor today, which is surely against the rules. I think he should be punished for that." Dumbledore was quite surprised by this accusation. His observations of Harry during the boy's time at Hogwarts had always shown him to be well-mannered and calm, never one to stir trouble. "Really? That's quite serious," Dumbledore said softly. "Please, tell me everything. How exactly did Harry bully Lily and you? I want to understand the whole situation so I can help address it properly." Charles then detailed the entire sequence of events, starting from the incident at Gringotts to the confrontation that had just occurred in the corridor near the castle exit. Dumbledore listened carefully, his expression turning more contemplative as Charles spoke. Dumbledore understood that the rift between Harry and his parents showed no signs of healing. The broken relationship was a direct result of his own decisions or lack thereof, and Dumbledore felt a deep regret about it. Dumbledore also knew that despite the pleas of Lily and James for forgiveness, Harry remained distant and unresponsive. Dumbledore's own inquiries had revealed that Harry was now part of a happy family and seemingly had no need for the parents who had once left him behind. Dumbledore didn't know how to help fix the broken relationship in the Potter family. He had always struggled with mending relationships, as seen with the strained ties he had with his own brother. Reflecting on the recent confrontation between Charles and Harry, Dumbledore found it hard to place blame on either side. Charles was trying to defend his mother's honor, seeking an apology from Harry. Harry, on the other hand, wanted nothing to do with the Potters and thus chose to avoid any confrontation. Yet, what truly caught Dumbledore off guard was Harry's use of a silent disarming spell. Dumbledore was well aware of Harry's academic excellence, as his grades and teacher comments had consistently been impressive. However, the ease with which Harry had performed a wandless disarming spell, a skill typically mastered at Newt level, suggested that his talents were even greater than he had demonstrated at school. It was clear that Arcturus Black had provided Harry with exceptional training. This newfound understanding deepened Dumbledore's regret over his past decision to leave Harry in the Muggle world, severing his ties with his family. Harry could have been a formidable ally for the light side, potentially aiding Charles in future conflicts against Voldemort. Now, Dumbledore was concerned about Harry's loyalties. Being raised and trained by Lord Black of the dark-leaning Black family, Dumbledore was sure that Harry had developed a strong resentment towards him and his biological parents, raising fears that he might be drawn towards darker paths. Determined to rectify the situation if possible, Dumbledore resolved to keep a closer watch on Harry and, if the opportunity arose, to guide him back towards the light. As Charles looked at Dumbledore, hoping for some help in punishing Harry, Dumbledore spoke with a gentle firmness, "I'm sorry, Charlie. You were the first to draw your wand, and Harry only disarmed you in self-defense. It was a harmless action, and I can't punish him for that. If I did, I'd have the Department of Magical Law Enforcement questioning my actions, especially given Harry's connections to Sirius and Amelia." Charles's face fell, his disappointment clear. Dumbledore felt a pang of sympathy but knew he couldn't act unfairly just to make Charles feel better. Charles nodded, a bit sullenly, "I understand, Grandpa. I'll find my own way to make Harry understand." Dumbledore cautioned him gently, "Be careful, Charlie. Harry is quite skilled in magic, more than you might expect." Charles thought out loud, "Maybe I should get some help from the older students. I bet Fred and George would join me in a prank on Harry. That might just push him to write that apology." Ron chimed in eagerly, "Oh, they'd love that. 4 against 1, your brother won't stand a chance, Charlie." Dumbledore felt a wave of concern at their words. Considering Harry's demonstrated skills, he doubted that even the Weasley twins could outmatch him. He worried that any pranks might only worsen the situation. "No pranks and certainly no violence," Dumbledore advised firmly. "Understanding and patience can often solve problems better than conflict. Remember, violence is never the solution. Talk to Harry, and try to see things from each other's perspective. Let love guide your actions." Charles seemed to ponder this for a moment, then responded, "Dad always said pranks were the best way to make people see your point, but maybe I'll try your way too. Perhaps there's a way to reach him without resorting to tricks." Disappointed that he couldn't take immediate action against Harry as he had hoped, especially after Ron had suggested they could get Harry in trouble for using magic in the corridors, Charles felt let down. "All right, Grandpa, I guess it's good night then. I'll head back now." "Good night," Charles said, not hiding his disappointment as he prepared to leave Dumbledore's office. Chapter 125, Quidditch Shake-Up. As Charles turned toward the door, ready to leave Dumbledore's office, Dumbledore stopped him with a warm call. "Charlie, don't leave with a heavy heart. As headmaster, it's important for me to act fairly and not misuse my authority to punish anyone unjustly. But I do have something that might cheer you up," Dumbledore said, his face breaking into a kindly smile. Charles paused and turned back, his curiosity replacing his earlier disappointment. "What kind of surprise? Do you remember mentioning that you wanted to join the Quidditch team?" "Well, I've found a way for you to try out," Dumbledore revealed, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Really? I can really try out for the Quidditch team? But I thought first years weren't allowed," Charles responded, a mix of excitement and confusion in his voice. Dumbledore chuckled softly. "Actually, there's no rule that outright forbids first years from playing. What I'm offering is not a spot on the team but a fair chance to prove yourself at the tryouts. You'll need to show your skills and impress the team if you really want to secure a place." Charles's face lit up with determination. "I will make the team. Dad always tells me I'm naturally gifted at Quidditch. I'll show everyone at the tryouts and will definitely make the team." "Thank you so much, Grandpa Dumbledore." Ron, who had been listening intently, gave Charles a nudge, hinting at something. Understanding his friend's silent request, Charles turned back to Dumbledore. "Grandpa, can Ron try out for the team too?" Charles asked eagerly. Of course, Ron, Dumbledore responded warmly. All first years have the opportunity to try out if they can impress the team captain. It's not just for Charles. Dumbledore had initially intended only to give Charles the opportunity, but to avoid appearing biased, he decided to allow all first years to try out. He wasn't particularly concerned about Quidditch as a game, his primary goal was to fulfill Charles's wish. Charles, getting excited about the prospect, quickly asked another question. Can I use my own broom for the tryouts? With my Nimbus 2000, I'm sure no one has any chance against me. That's a bit tricky, Charles, Dumbledore explained, his tone gentle yet firm. You see, first years are generally not permitted to bring their own brooms to school. You'll need to use the school's brooms or perhaps borrow one from an older student for the tryouts. Dumbledore wanted to help Charles join the Gryffindor Quidditch team directly because of his enthusiasm, but Minerva, who was passionate about the sport, insisted that only the most capable should make the team, regardless of their year. She eventually conceded that Charles could have a trial, but he had to prove himself like any other player. No way. Can't I really use my own broom? Charles protested. Dumbledore, understanding Charles's disappointment, quickly offered a solution. If you successfully make the team, you can ask your parents to send your Nimbus 2000 to Professor McGonagall, he explained. She will hold onto it for you and only bring it out for training sessions and matches. That's the fairest arrangement I can offer. Charles's face brightened at this. That works for me. Thanks, Grandpa Dumbledore. Mom and Dad are going to be so happy to hear this, Charles said with a bright smile, his earlier frustration forgotten. Filled with new excitement, Charles and Ron hurriedly left the office. Dumbledore watched them leave with a warm smile, pleased to see Charles so happy. Had Harry been present during this conversation, he would have been greatly surprised. Dumbledore's treatment of Charles was vastly different from how he had interacted with Harry in the canon. Here, Dumbledore genuinely treated Charles as a grandson, genuinely concerned with his happiness. In contrast, in the canon, Dumbledore seemed more focused on preparing Harry for his role in fulfilling the prophecy, often at the expense of his personal happiness and well-being. As dawn broke over Hogwarts, the entire school was buzzing with the news that first years were now eligible to try out for Quidditch teams. This unexpected update was all thanks to Ron, who couldn't keep the news to himself and had blurted it out in the Gryffindor common room. Harry and his friends gathered to discuss this new development, each person showing a different reaction. This is so unfair, Roger lamented. Why weren't we allowed to try out in our first year? Arabella chimed in with a slight frown. Did the headmaster change the rule just for his golden boy? Strictly speaking, he didn't bend or break any rules. There's no rule that says first years can't play on the Quidditch team. The only rule is that first years can't bring their own brooms to school. It is just that there really hasn't been any precedent of a first year getting selected for the team and playing, so it's more of an unspoken assumption than an official rule. Harry clarified. Cedric, ever the peacemaker, added thoughtfully, it makes sense, though. There's no use getting upset about it. Even if we had been allowed to try out as first years, we weren't ready for the level of competition. You're right. Considering how some teams play, participating in Quidditch as a first year could have been dangerous, Harry agreed. But this news has the first years excited. It looks like many of them are planning to try out, Reggie noted. Suddenly, Angelino looked at Harry curiously. Do you know if your brother is going to try out? What position does he play? I mean, it could shake up our team dynamics. Harry shrugged, I'm not really sure. Our family has a strong Quidditch background, though. James Potter was a good chaser when he was here at Hogwarts. I'd expect Charles to have some talent. But don't worry too much about it. If he doesn't meet the standards, Professor McGonagall won't let him on the team. She's quite competitive and won't let any favoritism ruin Gryffindor's chance at the Quidditch Cup. Angelina felt reassured by Harry's explanation. Their discussion was suddenly interrupted by Susan, who rushed towards them, bursting with enthusiasm. Harry, did you hear the news? I can try out for Quidditch. Susan announced excitedly. Don't get too excited, Susan. Sirius and Amelia won't allow you to play this year, Harry cautioned her. Why not? I'm good, right? You told me I'm a decent chaser. I really want to play, Susan replied, her initial excitement fading into frustration. Cedric, overhearing their conversation, asked Harry curiously, is she really that skilled? Harry? Hufflepuff could really benefit from a talented chaser. She's good, but you'll have to wait a year before she can try out for the team. Sirius and Amelia are well aware of how rough Quidditch can be. They won't permit her to play just yet, Harry explained. This news visibly disappointed Susan, who looked upset as she protested, "That's so unfair." Trying to lighten her spirits, Harry suggested a possible compromise. "Cedric, what if you took her on as a reserve? She could join in on the training sessions. It'd be a great way to get her ready for next year." Cedric considered the suggestion seriously. "If she's really as good as you say, I'll talk to the team captain about letting her participate in practice sessions." Susan's mood brightened instantly at this new possibility. "Really? That would be amazing!" she exclaimed, her hope restored by the prospect of being involved with the team in some capacity. Meanwhile, the conversation turned back to Harry's situation. "So, are you playing this year, Harry?" Cedric asked. Roger chimed in before Harry could respond. "Unfortunately, no." The new captain didn't agree to Harry's conditions for joining the team. Harry wasn't particularly shocked by the captain's decision. The captain came from a family that held strong pure-blood beliefs and seemed threatened by Harry's potential to overshadow him on the field. If Harry had agreed to join without any special conditions, the captain would have had no choice but to include him, but his refusal gave the captain a convenient out. Harry expressed his feelings about the situation. "I don't really like him, and the feeling is mutual. Luckily for the team, they've found a decent second-year girl to take the seeker spot, so it's not like Ravenclaw lacks options." Cedric laughed. "It's probably for the best. When you play, the seeker role seems too dominant. Before the other team can even score 150 points, you'd have caught the snitch." Susan joined in, trying to lighten the mood. "Yes, Harry is incredible. But he's always too busy training and never has time to play Quidditch with me." Harry shook his head, smiling slightly at the banter. "Okay, enough about Quidditch. It's time for class. Let's get moving." As the group dispersed, the news of first-year eligibility for Quidditch trials continued to buzz through the corridors of Hogwarts. The news had stirred excitement and a bit of controversy among the students, but for the first years, it was a thrilling opportunity. They spent the morning buzzing with excitement, discussing strategies and the upcoming tryouts with anyone who would listen.
Thanks for listening.